Media, an illusion of choice. Do you know that only 6 corporations own 90% of the American media? The most powerful special interest group in Washington is the media. The media is the gateway of information to the American public, and any politician strives to reach the public through the media. Thus, the media have a great say in which politician is granted a voice. To provide a historical perspective, in 1983, 90% of the American media was controlled by 50 companies. Through a history of mergers and acquisitions, these companies have concentrated their control over what we see, hear, and read. In many cases, these companies control everything, from initial production to final distribution. Now only 6 companies own 90% of our media. Our main source of information and cultural output is coming from these 6 giant conglomerates: Comcast, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. Profit maximization is the ultimate goal of every corporation. And if that goal becomes entangled with reporting the truth in the news, what will ultimately win out? What happens when there is no one left to compete with? When one company owns everything in your town, does the people in your town have a voice in their media anymore? Would they hear or watch content that is relevant to their lives? Probably not. The more independent media outlets a community has, the more different viewpoints will be presented on air. And the question that arises, do we really have a choice in our media?
As a public service, TV Free Baltimore provides a digital soapbox for those the mainstream media ignores. The opinions expressed in this live stream are not necessarily those of the owners, management, or underwriters of TV Free Baltimore. Furthermore, TV Free Baltimore streams hyper-local content focusing on politics and entertainment in the Baltimore viewing area.
Streaming live from the Paul and Catherine Ranke Memorial Studio, this is TV Free Baltimore. Support for TV Free Baltimore comes from viewers like you. Become a TV Free Baltimore member by visiting patreon.com/tvfreebaltimore.
Welcome to TV Free Baltimore's 4th live stream. Those living in the Lansdowne, Riverview, Baltimore Highlands, and Arbutus area should watch the first 2 shows following these opening comments. We've interviewed the Republican candidates running for the House of Delegates from the 12th District, which includes Lansdowne, Riverview, Baltimore Highlands, and Arbutus. We've also interviewed one of the current delegates, Democrat Clarence Lamb, who is running for the state Senate seat from the 12th District. Each interview runs about a half an hour. Before those interviews, I'm going to answer an email which reads, "Why did you start TV Free Baltimore?" One reason is for an experience I have on almost a daily basis. While at work, I listen to NPR stations 88.1, 88.5, and 88.9. When I arrive home, I'll surf through our local news channels, 2, 11, 13, and 45. Often, our local news outlets run the same stories in the same sequence, with the same narrative, and sometimes with the identical visuals. It appears our local news outlets mirror one another instead of standing alone as independent sources of information. I found a video on YouTube which shows this mirror phenomenon across local networks.
In consumer news, economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
If your email inbox is out of control and you've given up sorting it out, a Baltimore company thinks it has a solution for you. Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the
Talk show host Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be able to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
Conan O'Brien may be about to push the envelope on late-night television.
Have you two noticed this mirror effect in local media? Do you two see the same stories in the same sequence with the same narrative playing on each and every of our news outlets? So to answer the question, why did you start TV Free Baltimore, we did so to provide a digital soapbox for those the mainstream media ignores, and to provide information the media will not bring to light. With that said, we're going to continue the conversation started in the last live stream by revisiting the question, is Baltimore County becoming the new Baltimore City? In the last live stream, we visited the website How Money Walks, which shows the migration of wealth out of Maryland, out of Baltimore County, and out of Baltimore City. We then visited the United States Census website, American Fact Finder, and discovered a growing number of people are now living under the poverty line in Baltimore County, and the number of vacant houses in Baltimore County is also growing. All of the mentioned information was presented as a backdrop for revealing Kevin Cabinet's plan to import more poverty to Baltimore County. To continue the conversation, we're going to present a document entitled The War Against Baltimore County, penned by Steve McIntyre, candidate for Maryland's House of Delegates in District 42A, which is Towson. This document is 24 pages long. I'm going to highlight a few of the pages, and then I'll post a standalone video with all 24 pages. I highly recommend you watch the video and become familiar with what is going to happen to Baltimore County. Okay, scrolling down to the second page, let's highlight this at the bottom. This is the largest relocation program in the United States. It has been implemented largely in secret through litigation and collusion with HUD. We should believe its architects when they say this is only a first step. And the first step is to bring 3,100 voucher families relocated from Baltimore City to high opportunity neighborhoods throughout the metro area, mostly Baltimore County, which is going to be more than 10,000 people leaving Baltimore City and moving into Baltimore County. Here, Kevin Cabinet set aside $33 million of Baltimore County taxpayer money to subsidize developers to build 1,000 low-income units. And they're going to relocate 2,000 more families to high-opportunity county neighborhoods like Towson. Okay, now we're going to scroll down to page 3. $11,346 high-poverty households relocated from Baltimore City to Baltimore County. And these are one of the goals outlined in this book here. Okay, let's go down to page 6. If you look at this map over here, all the areas in green are areas that people that have these vouchers or are going to have these vouchers they can move into. Neighborhoods like Perry Hall, Parkville, Towson, Lutherville. Now here are two things that are very interesting. This organization, BRHP, answers to no elected officials in the city or the county, and they do not respond to Freedom of Information Acts. That does not sound democratic to me at all. Okay, now let's scroll down to page 21. Section 715 limits county executives' authority to commit to spending beyond what is appropriated by County Council, Baltimore County Council. And this is the most obvious violation by Kevin Cabinets as our county executive. Abuse of power, very interesting. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to do a standalone video where you can take your time, read through this, go through it as you wish. You really should learn what's inside this, and we really need to work together to get these two guys out of office. Well, that concludes this live stream's introduction. We have the usual shows for you this week. One episode of Gunhild Carling Live. We're going to have 2 episodes of History at Risk, which takes a look at local history. We also have a few surprises. But now we're going to start with 2 back-to-back episodes of Maryland Politics, with interviews from 4 of the candidates running in the 12th District. Enjoy.
Hi, this is Cindy Williams, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore.
This is Gunhild Carling, and you are watching TV Free Baltimore. You are not watching. You have to watch TV Free Baltimore.
This is my jump shot. Trash ball, I need pay. Everybody wins. Let me show you how to play. Well, when you pick up some trash, and it's a ball, and then you throw it in the bucket, you're playing a trash ball. A jump shot hook, you gotta put it away. We're gonna play that trash ball every day.
Come on, Baltimore, play ball and keep it clean.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, this is Paul Stefan, and this is another edition of Maryland Politics. And today we're talking to what will be the Republican slate for the House of Delegates in District 12. And they are Melanie Harris, Bob Cockey, and Michael Russell. And I'd like each one of you to introduce yourselves by letting the voters know your background and why you're running and how your past experience is going to pay off as being one of our representatives. Start with Melanie, since she's on the end.
And ladies first.
Sure. I am a longtime resident of the Arbutus area in District 12 and a lifelong Maryland resident. I have experience in event marketing. That's the majority of my career background, and I also have experience in the Maryland legislature. I worked in the General Assembly last year for a Republican state senator as chief of staff. Care about the community, want to be a bigger voice in this community. I had a baby 5 months ago, and it really changes everything when you're a parent. That's what they say, and it's true. And my son is my motivation. I'm running for him, I'm running for his future, and I'm running for the future of all the sons and daughters of the residents in District 12.
Okay, terrific. Mr. Cockey.
I'm a small businessman. I can't say that I'm retired, but I'm semi-retired. I'm entering into this political race because I'm tired of the foolishness, the no accountability for the spending where the tax dollars go. I'm upset, and I do have the time, and I've got the common sense to get involved. I've lived in this district for well over 32 years. I'm married, I have a son, 26 years old. He went through this school system in this district up into the 8th grade. He graduated from Mount St. Joe, and he went on to graduate from Towson. He's currently a volunteer firefighter.
That's great.
At the Elkbridge Fire Department, and I've done things. I've umpired Little League games in the district. I've refereed basketball games. I'm not a rich person. I'm never going to be rich, but I'm going to win this seat through hard work and just common sense. It doesn't make sense to me that an athlete can make $30, $50 million a year, and our school teachers and firefighters and first responders, they're the people that are the real heroes as far as I'm concerned. And I know a lot of people down there in the House. I'm not going to name them. I consider them friends, but it doesn't mean that I have to vote with their foolishness. There has to be some accountability on where our money's going. And another thing I'm interested in is welfare fraud. I'm not saying that there's not people that need help, but I'm saying that the money that's been allocated to, quote, help them hasn't done anything to help them in 50 years, and we're going to just keep running the same programs that don't work is nonsense. And as a small businessman, I know what it's like when your car breaks down the same day you get your BGE bill. And we can't just keep printing money and making out like everything's going to fix itself tomorrow, because it's not. And I want to be a pain in their butt down there. I want to hold people accountable.
Good.
I can also be a full-time delegate. This is not going to be a part-time gig for me. So I want people to hire me, and I need their help. And I think that people are waking up, and we've seen that in some of the national elections. And I'm asking the Democrats, and I think they're waking up, that the Democratic Party has done nothing to help the people that need help. And I just want to try to create, and I know I'm only going to be a small part of this. I'd like to create a level playing field for everybody. So I don't just mean race or economic situations. I mean in a local level. I think Lansdowne, whatever's good for Towson is good for Lansdowne. You know, the playgrounds in Lansdowne should be just as nice as they are in Towson. The schools that that they're getting ready to build in Delaney Valley could have been built. They found the money to build Delaney Valley. They could sure find money to build a new school in Lansdowne. And that's what I'm here. I'm here to make people accountable for what they do with our money.
Oh, very good. Now, Michael Russell.
I'm Mike Russell. I'm running for State Delegate in District 12. The reason I'm running, a little background about me. I served in the Maryland Army National Guard for 7 years. I was deployed once overseas in support of war on terrorism and in support of the MFO mission, Multinational Force Observers, to protect the border between Egypt and Israel. I came back and I looked at our state. I saw many problems that we were having. And being deployed down in Baltimore City during the 2015 riots, I saw those problems multiply. For me, being a leader is something more. It's calling. It's something that I aspire to every single day. And with that being said, I don't see any leaders within Annapolis. I see politicians. I don't see statesmen. And to me, that is really a big importance and a difference. Because a leader leads from the front. They are out there with their men and women. They're down in the trenches, getting stuff done daily, making sure their people are taken care of. And I don't see that down in Annapolis.
Okay.
I see people running around, getting stuff in their own self-interest done. And we need to put the people before we put ourselves.
Very good. So you're talking about the difference. So you say what you see as a statesman as opposed to a politician.
Yes.
Okay.
Jim, can I say one last thing?
Please do. You can jump in a whole time we're here.
When I first got involved in this, I didn't, my idea of a slate was something I didn't want any part of until I met these two.
Okay.
These young guys are our future. She's a smart girl. She knows her way down there. Okay. I'll be lost there. I'm depending on. We have a Senate candidate, Joe Ho. Joe's run a lot of times before.
Yes, he has.
And I'm going to tell you something. It's not that Joe's a loser. Joe's a fighter, and he's back to win it again. And we gotta represent Joe. He wasn't able to be here today because he's a small businessman.
Right.
So I just want to put that out there that we're a team. And we need you to look into our backgrounds, and we need you to hire us. I mean, enough is enough with what's already down there.
Right.
So I just want to throw that in, that we are a team, and that one of our team members wasn't able to be here today.
Well, part of that is we do hope to get Joe here separately and do an interview with him. And the point I try to make is that even though in the last election he lost, but he had the highest number of votes of any Republican candidate.
Pete Malkovich is also, even though he's not he's on our slate for the 1st District in Baltimore County, and we like Pete a lot. We think he's a team player, and he's in it for one reason, to help his community. I think he lives in this area, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Doesn't he?
He lives in Lansdowne.
Oh, he does.
Terrific. And Joe Ho does too, doesn't he, Mike?
Yes,
Joe Ho business right down the road.
Yeah, so you've got two of our team members are right here local for you. I mean, if the voters in the the 12th district that live in this lower part, if they want to continue to have people represent them out in Columbia and have all the money head out there, all the representation coming from their Howard County district, well, you know, don't cry, you know, when you don't have a new school 5 years from now. You just didn't put the right people in office.
Good point, because I've always been upset by seeing these people from the Howard County part of the district get elected, and if you live in this area as you have, and for a long period of time, this part of Baltimore County has always gotten the short end of the stick. Yeah. Always.
Yeah. It's kind of like Sicily. You know, you're down there in the boot, and you know what they did. They formed a little team, and
I think we hear a lot of disappointment also from neighbors and from community residents that their voices aren't being heard. So it's not just our perspective that matters in this, obviously. The residents actually do feel ignored. And they're starting to speak up now. Good. And so because they're starting to speak up now, and it's an election year, the people who are currently seated are saying, oh, let's do something about this. It's a little too late. Obviously, you know, our interest isn't simply winning, our interest is everyone winning. So if things do get done for a positive direction in our district, that's a win for us as well. But when we're elected, they won't be ignored for 4 years like they have been. It's not just going to be an election year promise or an election year effort. It's going to be an ongoing effort. We're hard workers. You know, we come from a diverse variety of backgrounds, but we're all hard workers. And I know that I'm the kind of person who, when I commit to something, I go all in. You know, I have a baby. What am I thinking? It's very unpopular to be a candidate with a new baby. Usually people wait till their children are school age and there's some self-sufficiency and some more time, I guess. So I'm in overtime. You know, Bob's saying he's a full-time candidate. Yes, having a baby is also a full-time job, so I'm in overtime at the moment.
It's also the most important job in the world, being a mom.
No complaints.
Now, but would you say that you really, because of the way things are in the state, in the county, and in this district, you can't wait for your child to get into the school system because 5 years, 4 years from now, it's going to be a little late to get things started?
That's exactly how I feel. I could wait until the next election, for example, and say, all right, now's my time. But no, now's my time. Now when my baby is a baby, you know, when I have time to make education policy that will positively affect his future, now's when I want to get in. I don't want to wait until whoever, you know, the people in here now who are ignoring our area are in office, for example, and just rely on them and say, all right, you know, we haven't really seen them in 4 years, but I just trust that when my baby's ready for school, everything will be okay. No, now's my time to run and make a difference and listen to our community and to get in.
And if I may interject, it's not just Baltimore County side. We've been hearing this from all over the district. You have in Howard County the APFO situation that has fallen on deaf ears with the Democrats.
Now, will you explain that to the audience? What is
APFO? So APFO is Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, and that basically means it makes sure that the roads, the sewage, the electrical, the plumbing, everything that is needed to have an infrastructure to support a school, to support a community, is there and foundation. And Howard County's APFO was just changed by the county council.
Oh, okay.
And a bill went before the state to make sure that it's an enabling legislation and enables the county council to go forward and change the APFO even more. And that's what the state would vote on. However, from what I've been hearing from many people is it's falling on deaf ears. This is a crisis when you have Howard County schools, some of the best blue ribbon schools in the state, being over capacity of 150%. That's ridiculous. We cannot do these to the students within the school. I grew up with a learning disability, ADHD and CAPD. CAPD stands for Central Auditory Processing Disorder. And in public schools here in Maryland, where I grew up, to get one-on-one time with a teacher was hard enough back in the 90s. Now it's practically impossible. And we're not giving those teachers what they need to teach. We're letting them just be filled with classrooms and not getting that one-on-one time with those students that so desperately need this.
Well, good.
And that's something that we're advocating about and we're trying to be the voice of, because we're not just here for Republicans, we're not just here for independents, we're not just here for Democrats, we're here for everybody. We're fighting for everybody, because that's what it means to be a leader, and that's what it means to be a politician and a statesman. Mm-hmm. And it should be that way, and it's not that way with the Democrats currently.
Because I was going to say, I'm glad to hear you say what you said about Howard County, because when we see, oh, this is the first time I'm interviewing 3 people, and they're all from this part of the district, I can see people in Howard County now switching and say, what about us?
Right.
They're going to look at their part of the Baltimore County only, you know?
But I don't believe that's true at all. One thing that I'm really excited about is that we do have parents in this district that are being that loud voice. There's a lot that's come out, I'm sure you know about the Project Baltimore, to see what's going on in the city schools. And obviously as state legislators, we would be able to make policy that would affect city schools. But one of the very disappointing things that they're saying is, you know, I saw something today, they have students coming in that haven't seen a parent in days.
Oh, absolutely.
It's very upsetting, and we are so lucky to have parents in this district that are raising their voices and saying, you know, don't forget about our students. And it's a shame that it had to come to that. So absolutely not. No, we won't be overlooking Howard County just because we live in Baltimore County. I spend a lot of time in Howard County. There's so many activities for my baby and for children in general, and it's a really family-friendly area. No, I do not ignore Howard County at all.
Mike,
Neither of us do.
Real quick?
Yeah, the great thing about this team is we're not going to ignore Howard County. But another thing is, I grew up in Howard County.
Oh, okay.
I grew up actually within the district in Columbia. Mm-hmm. My stepfather's David Carney owns his own business down there, Carney Callahan Law Firm. We were a part of the community, and I still feel I am a part of that community. I have friends and family down there, and I care deeply what happens in Howard County because I did grow up there, and that means a lot to me.
Now, here's another thing to think of. I know, you know, in this district, I think it's been traditionally Democratic delegates to say, that's an uphill battle for the 3 of you.
Absolutely.
How do you plan, you know, what's your battle plan or your victory plan? How are you going to make people say, hey, no, not these guys, not same old us? Do you have any thoughts on that, any of you?
Sure, it starts on the grassroots level. It isn't just sending mailers. I'm sure we'll be doing that too. It's actually getting out there and having FaceTime with the residents. When they get to meet us, when they get to see that we're genuine, that we're not just some partisan people here to take your vote, to take an endorsement, to get that little scratch on the back from these big unions, and then, you know, once we're in there, say, all right, where's our scratch on the back? No, that's not what we're about. We're here for the people. We, you know, when these current delegates announce that they're having the little switcheroo, that the one guy's running for Senate, and then the other 2 are looking for somebody to kind of welcome into their team, and the way they presented it was, you know, we have your replacement for you, voters. No. It's an election year.
Well put.
Their own party knows that they're fragile. That's why there's 8 people running for the 3 seats.
Wow.
Yeah. So when they meet us, when they have that opportunity, which we're going to give them that opportunity plenty to be out in the community and to have that FaceTime, I think that's how they'll know. Again, the grassroots approach. We are not bigger than anything. We're there. We're all equal. We're, you know, here to serve you. That's what public service is. You know, it's leadership, but it's also public service. And we're here to be your public servant. We know what that means. You know, he served the community. I've served in Annapolis as well for my former boss. We understand public service, and we know that it's not about the power, it's about the people.
Great. Okay, now what I want to get into, because we have about 20 minutes left, is what do you all see, you know, individually or what have you, as the big issues for District 12?
Well, I think we need to slow the growth down a little bit until we can get the schools and the rest of the infrastructure prepared for it, or we're going to be one big traffic jam. One of the ways I think that we're going to compete with the Democrats that are, you know, the incumbents, is we're going to outwork them, first of all. They feel pretty cushy in there, like they're unbeatable. because of the numbers, they're going to raise a lot more money than us. So that leaves us one option, Jim, and that's outwork them, which we will. I would like to think that my business experience, and most of it was in Baltimore City, I really care for Baltimore City. They're our neighbors. I have a lot of friends down there. Talking about education and things, and I don't want to get off the track, but when I earlier said I want a level playing field, and whether that kid's in Lansdowne or down there on Lombard Street in MLK, if those kids don't get a level playing field and a good start, and that means from the minute they wake up and they have a decent breakfast, or a parent, like Melanie referred to, they haven't seen their parents in days, until they've got a parent home that can help them with their homework, it might not seem that important to a lot of people that don't really look at the issues, but let's face it, that's a major reason for crime. I mean, uneducated people that have nowhere else to turn. I'm not saying that that's an excuse for them to commit crime, but until we give everybody the same opportunity, all these tax dollars that were given to us by the federal and from our state taxes, none of it was really generated or used. And I actually did a workforce development with Baltimore City Department of Social Service, and I was able to get a close-up view of what the mentality is of the people operating the programs. That money, we just flushed it down the toilet. You know, we don't want to keep people on welfare. We want to help them get jobs. I think it's in their DNA that they want to go out and provide for their family. But when they wake up, you know, in the situations they are down there, I like to be the guy that drives that bulldozer and just bulldozes down all those Perkins homes and Murphy homes down there. We've got over 16,000 vacant homes in Baltimore City. Right. 10,000 of them are in a condition where they can be rehabbed. That Locust Point project, and I don't want to get off the track because I will.
All right, but two things. Let me just say two things that you brought up there about infrastructure and empty houses. There is a big problem in this district of a lot of empty houses.
There is.
And we've had on our second stream, there was a study done nationally talking about tax base. And there have been people, they said, Baltimore City's lost a lot of people. They've come to Baltimore County, but, you know, the tax revenue has gone down because the people moving from the city are the lower income people who may not be working, who may be underemployed, and that is also bringing down the quality of life here in the county and in this district, because our district, even in my house, I'm almost on the border of Baltimore City.
I know. You know, I'm going to give Mike, I see Mike wants to say something.
We'll get him in there.
When you pay your teachers what they deserve, and they become your heroes, not some football player, when you can bring first responders and teachers into this area, into this neighborhood, you know, your houses are more affordable here than they are, say, in Glenelg or
Yes,
Clarksville.
of course. Yes.
So they're your first-time home buyers. When you create programs for first-time home buyers and you pay these teachers and these first responders what they deserve, now you've created a resident that's here forever. Now they plant their roots. Now you've got better schools, you've got better citizens, you got people getting involved in your neighborhood or community associations. You're going to have to win the war just like we're going to do it. One community center at a time, one show like this at a time. You're just going to have to work hard and have your people go out and vote for the right people. And you're just going to have to take back these empty houses. Are probably better constructed than a lot of new houses they build. So, I mean, Lansdowne, to me, if somebody says Lansdowne, look, I live in Arbutus, Southwark area. To me, you know what it says? It goes, that's a blue-collar, all-American town. I mean, that's, you know, I don't live in Cockeysville.
Understand Mike once again. Yeah, let's hear what he has to say about some of this.
Well, two things. I feel, and I think I can speak for the three of us, when we feel about jobs and job opportunities, it is the job of a political leader, and I said leader for a reason, to bring the community, jobs, and businesses together. If you want a job, it is the priority of our administration, of our leadership, to find you a job, to bring those businesses into your area and to make sure you have a job. That is key element to building a community, and that is what we need to do with here in Baltimore County. We need to build that up in Lansdowne, Arbutus, Halethorpe. We need to build that up down in Baltimore Highlands as well. Another thing to point out, I think that's going to be brought up within the race is healthcare, specifically the opioid epidemic.
All right.
I personally feel that, addiction is not something that somebody can help. It's a disease. It's not a crime. And to that effort, we need to provide those resources for those addicted. Now, not to say we don't go after the criminals who are peddling this stuff within our city. We need to have harsher sentences for these people, and we need to make sure we get them off the street and there's no longer able to peddle drugs within our community. But when it comes to addiction, we need to treat it like what it is. It is a disease, and we need to provide those resources to those people and make sure they have the continuing support they need to overcome this disease.
All right, now the important thing is, again, what we try to emphasize on our shows, and we want people who are here as candidates to talk about, that the issues not only are local issues, but local to the point of how do the issues affect them personally. So how do these issues affect you all personally? Melanie first.
Sure. So just to go back to what are important issues in District 12, yes, absolutely. They're the same things that affect everything else in our state. Drug use. I wish it was as simple as, going to the city to buy drugs. That maybe was what it was 20 years ago. Now you can go anywhere and buy drugs. I attended an opiate discussion last night hosted by a Republican club, a woman who hosts an organization who unfortunately lost her son at a young age due to this epidemic, and it all began because he was an athlete with a sports injury who got hooked on pills. And it is so common and so upsetting. We need to find something to do about that. So yes, that affects our community, that affects Maryland. That's one of the things that I'm going to try and make a difference with when I get into the House. How it affects me personally is in 2016, I lost one of my closest friends to the epidemic. I have a bunch of opinions about the drug wars. I also, addiction is a disease. Once you get hooked on something, there needs to be an intervention. There needs to be a plan of how we're going to help people. It's not, let's prosecute this person, because that doesn't get them, that doesn't stop the addiction. That doesn't help them. That doesn't get them, into a better place in their life. Yes, and economics is something that it's the economy of this part of our district needs a plan, needs to be improved, because like I said, we're lucky because we have parents in this district who care. We have parents who want opportunities for their students. They want better facilities for their students. We want to be there to support these parents, to support these residents, and to help them build this community. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that with job opportunities. We're going to do that with, the houses won't be vacant when there's jobs here. There's jobs here, people move here, they fill the homes, the housing economy booms. That's how this area gets built up. Everything's built around the housing economy. Of course, property taxes fund the schools. Once we have more of these homes filled, then we'll have more taxes, we'll have more resources available to help with some of the issues with, obviously, the Lansdowne High School. There's a lot of concern about it. It needs a lot of help. It's not motivating when you're in a sweltering classroom in the summer. There's no air conditioning units. There's no long-term solution. They have the Band-Aid. They have, okay, so we're going to give some renovation money. That's not a good investment, because you're going to have to turn around again and spend more money once that shows to be not sustainable.
Tear it down.
Well, the point to bring in there, but a couple things I have on is that knowing that, it was the county executive who I think he was, Delaney, of course, was his pet. And we had to choose between Delaney and Lansdowne. And also whoever he was pressured by in the Towson area,
That's
which
where
was
the votes come
county,
from.
right, to say we want to do something for Delaney.
This disproportionate funding is so common and so transparent and such a political move. I mean, there's been controversy over the signs that he just put up for the Schools for Our Future. That is a 6-year-old plan, but now in an election year he's taking school funds to put up these signs around all the schools. It's just, everything is his pet. This is not, we're entering politics to change the game to be actual leaders. We're not, entering politics to be just another politician who once we're in there, again, we get our scratch on the back and we go about our way and we forget the people that we're serving. Absolutely not. We're here to make an actual difference.
Another thing that's been recently in the media, is in the county here, they talked about the budget specifically, talked about, surplus versus a deficit, and how things aren't balancing. And for the next administration, whoever the next county executive is going to have something dropped in his or her lap, that taxes may have to be raised for the first time in 20 or 30 years in Baltimore County.
We'll see. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We're going to go down the line, Mike. Yeah. You're the younger, so I agree with Melanie with the Lansdowne High School. That's a Band-Aid.
And so, as we started with Melanie, let's finish with Melanie with a final few words from you.
Okay. I'm Melanie Harris. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm nobody special. I'm just like the people in my community. I'm getting married this year. I'm running now because I feel like it's the right time. Maybe it's an inconvenient time while I'm planning a wedding and raising a baby.
I'm doing her hair and makeup.
But I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in what we're here to do. I believe in this community, and I want to be here to help it with positive change. And I know that I'm capable of doing that. I know that my experience in Annapolis, I know that my background, I know that my personality and my values, my Republican values, absolutely, but I don't judge myself based on one word, Melanie the Republican. That's not who I am. I'm Melanie the neighbor. I am Melanie the mother. I'm Melanie the vegetarian. I am more than one thing wrapped up into Melanie Harris, and I'm doing it for the right reasons. So again, do your homework, and I look forward to meeting you.
Great. I want to thank you all for coming today, and it's been great having you here. And I want folks out there to know something that Melanie said is very important. Not just to vote, as Bob said, but be an informed voter. So please, look into these folks, follow with what they're doing between now and the general election, because they are running unopposed in the primary on the Republican ticket as delegates of District 12. And so we have to stop, and I thank you for watching, and tune in next time for Maryland Politics. Good night.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Maryland Reporter is a news website about state government and politics. That's what we do. We don't do sports, we don't do entertainment. We do some local news as it impacts politics and state government. From the very start, November 2nd, 2009, we do a daily state roundup from now 50 different websites, the Baltimore Sun, the Washington Post, the Hagerstown Herald Mail, other newspapers around the state, broadcast outlets, smaller newspapers, some blogs, and we put it together, and this is the thing that people find most valuable. But we also do original stories that focus on accountability of state government, transparency, how tax dollars are raised and spent. We do a daily email newsletter that people can go on the site and sign up for. It takes about 10 seconds. That's going out to 8,600 subscribers every weekday. And so, our niche, to repeat again, is really state government and politics.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
TV Free Baltimore viewers, we have an important announcement to make, so please pay attention. We're with today Delegate Clarence Lamb, our legislative representative, one of them, from District 12, and he has an important announcement. Clarence.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'm really pleased to announce that I am running for the State Senate to represent District 12. As many of your viewers know, Senator Ed Casemeyer has just a few weeks ago announced that he will retire at the end of this term. He's left a strong legacy of service to our community, and I'm running because I want to be able to continue to represent our community well in the Maryland State Senate, to be able to continue to work on issues that are important to our district, as I have for the last 4 years. This includes items like education, making sure that we continue to bring new schools here to Southwest Baltimore County and renovate the old ones that really need help, that we continue to work on transportation projects here in Southwest Baltimore County. We need to reduce commute times for people that are just trying to get to work, and improve our mass transit and highways here in the area as well. We need to continue to work on protecting the Chesapeake Bay and the environment that we have here in Maryland, because the Chesapeake Bay, we know, fuels so much of the economy here in Maryland, and that touches on the last part that I think is important too, that I want to look at. I want to make sure that we continue to foster job growth here in the state of Maryland. There are many things that we've done over the last 4 years that I think have continued to help us grow our economy, but we need to continue to do more. And so that includes addressing healthcare issues. Those issues are near and dear to me as well as a physician, and I'm happy to talk more about any of those areas, because I think those are important for our district, and I want to make sure that we continue to carry on that legacy of service that Senator Casemeyer has done so well for our community here.
And what do you see as those specific issues that affect District 12?
So, I think there are a few specific issues that really come to mind when we're at voters' doors. So the first one I would say is education. In the last few years, our statewide ranking compared to other states across the country has actually slipped a few notches. So when you look at 5 years ago, Maryland was #1 when it came to education of all the states in the country. Currently, we're #5, I believe. We slipped over the last few years downwards. I think the challenge is that we have rising enrollment in a lot of these school districts. We have aging infrastructure, which I think the folks here in Southwest Baltimore County are acutely aware of. And we need to potentially put more resources to invest in the future, and that means making renovations to schools, and putting new schools up, making sure that classrooms have adequate resources, making sure the classrooms are comfortable for students, making sure that students that really need additional help, that have special needs, that have disabilities, have those programs available to them. We need to raise everyone up, not just the cream of the crop, but everyone needs to be risen up. And so education is really a core issue, and that is the case across both counties. I think it's a real priority for folks, not just K through 12, but also higher education, which I'm happy to talk more.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about the education, because I don't want to jump to another topic yet.
Sure.
What is your position on charter schools?
So charter schools, I think, are a good mechanism to also allow communities to build their own type of school. And so we have charter schools in Maryland because it's a recognition of the fact that they can be really connected to their communities, and I think that is a real benefit that we see from charter schools. So I understand the need for charter schools because I think communities can have more input there. But I also want to make sure that our K through 12 public schools have adequate funding, have adequate resources, and are firmly supported to make sure that students get a high class, real quality education, regardless of whether they're at a K through 12 public school or a K through 12 charter school.
Right.
And I think we've done that here in the state.
Well, did you want to say anything more about education right now?
No, I think we pretty well covered it.
Well, what's the next thing you see as a big issue for District 12?
So I think the next thing that's a big issue for District 12 is transportation. There are tremendous transportation needs here. I commute from parts of Howard County up to Baltimore City, where I work at Johns Hopkins, and I see my commute increasing by 5 minutes every couple years, right? And I think everyone in this area is acutely aware of that. We see the bottleneck that's on the Beltway that takes place. We see the bottleneck that takes place on 95 and occasionally on 895 as well. And so, we need to look at all options when it comes to transportation. I know there's been an effort afoot to, put additional lanes that are being proposed on the Baltimore Beltway. And that's one part of the solution. And there's actually been renovations that most folks in this area are probably aware of that have been taking place over the last year or two on the Baltimore Beltway that actually will help increase access and reduce bottlenecks. But I also think we need to also look at transportation when it comes to mass transit, that it needs to be part of the picture as well. And so whether that's, additional light rail or more MARC trains down to DC or up to Baltimore, or improved access to these mass transit options, bus rapid transit is another option. I think we need to look at that because at some point we're going to run out of roads to be able to widen and roads to be able to build. It's not cost effective, for example, to put a second deck over the Baltimore Beltway. And at some point there's no more real estate to build to the side, right? And that's why, the new proposal is to actually take up some of the shoulder space to, put that extra lane in. That raises some issues too in terms of safety and cars breaking down, et cetera. But, we're going to run out of real estate. And so, mass transit does need to be part of that equation, when we look at the transportation picture here in the state.
Now, when you speak of that, and I know it does affect the county too, I know it's part of this metropolitan area, but the idea of using these rapid trains, the bullet trains or the maglev or whatever, they're kind of like, 15 minutes between Baltimore and DC kind of a thing. Because if it really does work and it's cost effective, it will hopefully take people off the roads.
That's true. And we've looked at that, and we've actually just had briefings recently in Annapolis on the possibility of this. There's a few proposals out there, including a maglev train, including something called the Hyperloop. That I think we have some concerns about the cost of how this would play out. Some of these technologies are still unproven. There's not been a cost-effective maglev train that has been developed anywhere in the world. The Hyperloop is still built on a lot of theoretical possibilities out there, and so we're concerned that even the proposal that we heard was to the tune of $50 billion to be able to build this kind of a system. And, anytime you're building a new system, there's going to be cost overruns. So let's say there's a 10% cost overrun on a $50 billion project. There's another $5 billion. The state's budget, would not be able to sustain that. And so we have some real concerns about, what that would mean realistically for the community. And then we also have some concerns that we've been hearing about from the community when it comes to noise, right? So these are tunnels that are going to be going through, some of the right-of-ways in the BW Parkway. Some of them are going to be underground, but some of the proposed, routes are actually taking them above ground. And when you think about it, you have, a train that's traveling at 300 miles an hour above ground. We're hearing concerns even now that, it could devalue property that's nearby, concerns about noise, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's a lot that still needs to be figured out before this is, a realistic, something that you would actually see, before your eyes. And so, I think our concern is to be able to come up with some common sense solutions that we can do today in the here and now. And that really means, things like improving the MARC system, creating more reliable service, creating more trains that are traveling back and forth between Baltimore and DC so that people who are commuting on those can rely on them, making sure that we have adequate parking at the Halethorpe station. There's a lot that we can do that's not going to cost $50 billion that will be just as effective in improving quality of life and something that we can see, in the next year or two.
No, I agree with that. I mean, at times I've had to use the commuter train, the MARC train, between Camden and Union Station. If you don't reach the last train, which might be like at 8:10 a.m., you've got to wait again till 4 or 5 in the afternoon or later, so that, it's not continuous like 12, 24 hours a day shuttles between DC and Baltimore, which in some ways is bad. It's evening, let's say I don't want to drive to DC because we know it's a headache. You just talked about 695, 495. And it'd be nice to take a train into DC if I wanted to go to the Kennedy Center or something, you know, and we don't have that.
Right. We don't have that, and we really need to improve serviced along the lines that we have. So, I think we need to be realistic about our solutions. I'm not sure the Hyperloop or a maglev is the most realistic solution in the here and now and the today. And I think there's a lot more that we can do that would more immediately improve people's lives, that would cost far less money. And I think those are the solutions we need to look for. We're having struggles, It's ironic that we have these discussions about the Hyperloop and maglev when you look at what just happened in Baltimore City 2 weeks ago, where the entire metro system was fully shut down with basically no notice, no advance notice to people, because of what we're being told are maintenance issues or issues that really have stemmed over the last couple of years. That should not happen. We need to reinvest in our infrastructure, make sure that those types of problems never come to the degree where they have to do an immediate shutdown of the full metro system in Baltimore to address those concerns. Those are the types of issues that we were looking at, and mass transit issues that can help in the in the near future, tomorrow or in the next year. So that's our priority.
Well, good. On an issue too, I want to bring up before we get back to maybe some of viewers, it does affect our area here. And a lot of people think that Baltimore County, in some ways, at least I'd say, the Baltimore County communities that border on the city are becoming pushing the border of Baltimore City out a bit, because the statistics say between 1993 and 2016, more than 70,000 Baltimore City residents moved in to Baltimore County. But during that same time period, Baltimore County lost $2.63 billion in annual adjusted gross income, despite the fact that the population grew by over 11,000 people. And add to that Kevin Kamnitz, who wants to be governor, attempted to use $30 million of the county taxpayers' money to build low-income housing in stable middle-class neighborhoods like Towson. And the final point there is also, in the last 10 years, a growing number of houses in Baltimore County have become vacant for the first time since World War II. That may be Lansdowne's #1 problem, in fact. Furthermore, during the same time period, beggars are increasing, and they're increasingly seen at county intersections, and trash is beginning to appear in places that were always clean, and rat populations have increased in certain neighborhoods in different parts of the county. And so what do you have to say to that?
So you've touched on a lot of different concerns and issues there.
Take what you can jump into.
And I think they in a way are interrelated. So when you look at what's taken place over the last couple decades, unfortunately, there's been a growing gap of income inequality. Right, so the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and that gap is getting larger. And that's a problem, I think, for not just our community, for our state, and also for our country. These are national trends that we're seeing. Now, to touch on some of the local issues, unfortunately, we're also seeing a national trend of gentrification, right? And so back in the 50s and 60s, people were fleeing cities, wanting to move to the suburbs, like Lansdowne, like Catonsville, like Arbutus, where they can have the picket fence, the white picket fence, the lawn and yard and space to grow. And then coincidentally, now everything is cyclical. So now we seem to be in a period where folks are wanting to move back in the city, right? That's where all the younger folks want to go. They want to have the nightlife. They want to have the mall nearby, restaurants, etc. And so you're seeing folks move back into the city too. Those trends, along with the fact that income inequality is growing, means that even though our people are still coming into Baltimore County, a lot of people are also leaving to go to more urban areas that have higher density. But here in Baltimore County, we're seeing the population grow a bit, but the income we're not seeing grow by the same amount. And so, I think that's where we as the legislature, and particularly those of us who are new serving in the General Assembly, are really taking a close look at policies and tax credits and benefits that are being given, and making sure that they're scrutinized to be able to help the little person. One bill that I voted against, for example, in Annapolis last year, was a credit for people that owned large yachts. And so that was something that in the end passed through the legislature, but I voted against it because I recognize that here in this district, most folks are not owning the $2 million yacht that's sitting out in the Chesapeake Bay. And that's a tax credit that's going to people that don't really need it,
Right.
that really, folks that are living here that are struggling to get by, that really need help, locally in their communities, don't get it. That's money that's going out the door from the state that really could be used to benefit people locally, the hardworking people that are in real need. And so, that's where I think bringing a fresh perspective to the legislature with so many new folks that are not, not necessarily used to the way things have always been done, right, and are willing to take a closer look and scrutinize some of the new policies that are coming down, and not necessarily always falling into line, but wanting to serve their community, or taking a closer look at bills like that to make sure, is that something that's really helping my community, or is that something that's not?
Right. I mean, along those lines, because you brought that up about housing, and we talked about it a little off camera, was that some of the ideas of vacant housing, at least in the case, could be, for example, that Maryland is the only state that has both, the inheritance tax and the death tax. And how you feel about it. I know that at the federal level they try to do something, or maybe even at the state level too, about the estate tax. But those two taxes could allow people like myself to not afford my parents' home, and then you'll have another vacant house to deal with.
Right.
So what are your feelings about that kind of way of helping people to maintain property or inherit property? Because with the aging of our population, you're going to have more of the children inheriting or taking over a lot of property, and they may not be able to sustain those properties.
Right.
So what is your feeling on that issue and about those tax issues?
So I think those tax issues bring up important points, and I think we do need to take a close look at that, because we have to reinvest in our communities. We have to help people who are struggling to get by, and we have to help people who are aging in their communities and also want to age in place. And so, when it comes to those issues, we do need to step up and provide some help to people who want to stay in their homes, who want to stay in their communities, and who want to stay in the state of Maryland. When I'm canvassing, I do hear of folks who are concerned about having to retire in a different state and move south because, A, the weather's better, but B, they're concerned about, being able to sustain their living here. And so, we don't want that to happen. We want people to love to be in Maryland. We want people to continue to be in Maryland. We want people to grow old and, stay with their families here in Maryland. That's why we're looking at policies like being able to age in place, which I mentioned earlier.
Right.
I think there are real benefits that we can provide. For example, for people to modify their homes to receive some kind of a tax credit or a deduction or a benefit, for folks to, for example, widen their doors so that if they want to stay in their homes and they may be in a walker or a wheelchair later, that, if you have that 36-inch wide door, that you can do that. That you can have benefits for people who, if they want to stay in their homes, can modify their homes to include guardrails or handles or railings, for example, in the shower, and to basically there are a lot of different things that you can do to improve aging in place, like removing steps that are going up to the front door. And there are some counties have actually put into place tax credits that will allow that to happen. These modifications do need to take place because people are getting older. We're having an aging community, and people want to stay in their homes longer. And we know that that's actually the best place for people to stay. I think if given a preference, people would rather be at home than at a nursing facility that's unfamiliar to them and that doesn't quite feel like home to them.
It works in my case because my parents and I are living together, and they were able to stay in their home because I'm there, and my mother's 95 and my father's 94, and I wouldn't want to see them in some of the nursing homes we've seen other relatives be in, and they're not the type of income earners that can afford a place like Charlestown or Oakcrest.
Right.
So, and that's a good portion, I think, of the aging population. They were the working class. My father worked for General Motors.
Right.
That kind of thing. You have people who worked for Bethlehem Steel, all these people that, don't want to lose their properties. I mean, one of the things is I know they haven't built all these things. They're planning down where Sparrows Point used to be. But all those cottages that they had built for the people who worked at the plant have all been leveled.
Yeah.
And they could have been saved for small families, or at least part of them. And there's nothing there yet. It's like I can say, well, we're going to get rid of this because we're replacing it with this.
Right.
But that's not happening.
Right. That's not
and
happening.
So
and I've been to Sparrows Point, and I saw that, it's just a lot of level space there.
And so that's part of this whole theme is like, how do we maintain a strong middle class environment?
I think that's our goal. That's really the goal of the District 12 team, is to really help the middle class, improve our quality of life, get people to stay here in our communities, because I think that's where people want to be. You don't want to be aged out, you don't want to be priced out, you don't want to be forced out. And so, anything that we can do in the legislature to help people stay in their homes, all the better.
Now, also, we are doing live streams on every other Saturday. And the second one, Dan, our director here, did a thing at the beginning and talked about the tax structure. It was a story that was on ABC, I believe. But Maryland is one of the highest taxed states. And what I talked about, not just people going from the city to the counties, is that people moving from Maryland to tax-free states or low, tax states, like people going to Florida and Nevada, and things like that, and other places that either have no state income tax or low state income tax. And part of what you're talking about, maybe if you want to mention it or not, talk about it at all, how then we can maintain those Marylanders, like you're talking about. I don't talk about the aging population, but just say, how do we get people to leave? Because, hey, I might be a millionaire and I got a better break if I live in Nevada or if I live in Florida, or, and not just the poor people, but even the working class or the middle class people who maybe when they retire, they see the money they've saved up disappear. They may not be sophisticated enough to have an IRA or something.
Right. And that is a challenge of Maryland, that, the taxes, bring a level of service that the community expects. And so, when you look at the roads just north, if you go into Pennsylvania, you'll see that there's a noticeable difference in, the quality of their highways and, their upkeep and their maintenance. And that's really because, Maryland does, provide a high level of service to the residents here in this state. Whether it's coming to, programs and services that relate to health, or making sure that we're responsive, that the MDOT, MVA and MDOT is responsive. Granted, there's rooms for improvement. Making sure that we, continue to protect and clean up the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay's, the health of the bay has been improving, but that's not, improving without, assistance from the state. And all of those, and also education, right? There's a reason that Maryland is, or was, number one when it came to our public school K-12 system. And that's through investments of, our hard-earned tax money to those types of programs. And so, we here in Maryland, I think, expect a lot. And we want to make sure that as a state, we continue to use that money effectively to give everyone that highest level of service. Because, that's, I think, our responsibility in the legislature, and then particularly on the House Appropriations Committee. We ask those hard questions of every single program, every health program, every housing program, every aging program, because that's the subcommittee that I serve on. How is this actually helping people? And is it really helping the people that are in the most need? Right? Are they helping people that are struggling to get by, that are not the yacht owners, but are the ones that can't put food on their table, or that there are job opportunity development programs, that there are apprenticeship programs, that there are economic development programs to help small businesses. Everything is a anytime you're dealing with money, it's a balance, right? It's making sure that you're getting a good value for the money that you're spending. And I think Marylanders are getting a good value, but they do have to contribute into that system to do that. And that's what the challenge is. We don't want people fleeing the state. But I think, comparing Maryland to other states, you see a real high level, high quality number of programs and services that are being offered that you just aren't finding elsewhere. But we need to stay on top of that as a legislature and make sure that things like our education, our K-12 school systems aren't slipping in any way. I think, for us, for the District 12 team, speaking on behalf of Senator Case Meyer, Delegates Hill and Ebersol and myself, we have served the community well over the last 4 years. Senator Casemeyer even longer. We know this community. We want to continue to serve this community because we know that there's still a lot of things that are left undone, that are unfinished business. We want to continue to improve higher education. We want to make sure that we fund our public school system, that we build new schools, that we renovate the ones that we need to, that we address our transportation needs here in Southwest Baltimore County, that we continue to protect the Chesapeake Bay for the treasure that it is. There is still a lot of unfinished business when it comes to addressing income inequality,
right.
Economic development, helping small businesses grow, because the vast majority of businesses here in Maryland are small businesses.
Right, exactly.
And so we need to pay attention to them too. There are a lot of needs there. And so in all of those ways, we think we've done a lot for the district. There's so much more that we can do, that we are really motivated. We're gung-ho, we're
Good.
New, and so we're active, we're energetic, and we're excited to be able to really make an impact for our local communities. And that's really the beauty of the Maryland General Assembly for all of us, regardless of what's going on with elections and campaigns. I think all of us come to the table for the right reasons, because we want to serve our communities. And I've seen that firsthand in the legislature, and I'm charged up and energized to be able to look forward to serving for another 4 more. And so, I want to make sure that we, continue to work as a team together to represent our district. We have a strong working relationship, and we're going to work collaboratively to help all of the residents in this community.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Nice
to be here.
Folks, that's the end of the edition here of our Maryland Political Show.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
This is Governor Ehrlich. You're watching TV Free Baltimore.
Hi, I'm Kathy Garver, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore.
You're watching TV Free Baltimore.
Hi, this is Jerry Rochelle, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore.
I'm Kreskin. Now, of course, you know me as the amazing Kreskin. And guess what? I can see it in your mind. I predict you're going to be watching.
See this cute little vial here? It's crack, rock cocaine, the most addictive form. You think it's the glamour drug of the 80s? Well, that's the point of this friendly little reminder. It can kill you. And if you've got to die for something, this sure as hell ain't it.
In all of freedom's history, there has never been an organization quite like the National Rifle Association of America. No other people are so alert, so vigilant, so unafraid to take a stand and go out and fight for what's good and right. We, the people of the National Rifle Association, represent the very best of America's strength and of America's character.
We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well.
Welcome to TV Free Baltimore Celebrity Interviews. In this episode, we interview former Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich.
Governor, you were here tonight speaking about leadership.
Yeah.
Now, in your career starting in Arbutus as an athlete, and then Gilman, Princeton, what did those things teach you, or your coaches teach you, to be the man you are today, or the leader that you are today?
Well, certainly it comes from your parents. It comes from your parents plus. When I talk about plus, your mom and dad are sort of the denominator, but it's it's your friends, your extended family, your teammates. You learn, coaches, teachers. You learn life lessons, and you learn to become a complete person. It's not just an athlete. It's not just a student. It's a student athlete. I call it a complete person. Athletics, academics, and social responsibility. So it's sort of it's the whole 9 yards. In my speeches, I call it really the completeness of a person, and it's also a moral obligation that when you have that sort of background, you have that obligation to give back, to make our state, our country, our neighborhoods better, and certainly in lessons that we're teaching our children as well.
Terrific. Now, a question I would have is, here you were a star athlete, you were a quarterback, with the Gilman and at Princeton. Did you ever consider a pro career?
Actually, I wasn't a quarterback. I was a linebacker. I was a linebacker, but well, I yes and no. I thought I got hurt the middle of my senior year. I was captain of the team, and I gave serious thought at the time to going to Canada, playing another year in college, in graduate school, and then playing pro in Canada.
Oh, okay.
So I knew I was too small for the NFL, but I was a pretty good player. Yeah. So events basically overtook that thought, but I actually looked at McGill Law School in one of the great law schools in the world there, and talked to the coaches. But the bottom line was I ended up going to Wake, where I was a graduate assistant football coach. I learned a lot of football in law school, and I worked for John Makovic and Al Groh, two very well-known head coaches. And then came back here, obviously, big law firm, started my political activities, my activism, and then ran for the House of Delegates at 29 years old.
Not sports law.
No. It was.
I know you didn't go for that, even considering you were an athlete.
No, I did not. In fact, although I ended up practicing law for 11 years with a great firm, I knew it wasn't my passion. It was sort of my means to an end. And at the end, obviously, was politics.
But you're back there now with King.
Well, I wouldn't call what I do practicing law. Okay. I give a lot of speeches. I do a lot of politics. I do a lot of TV. Obviously, I help Republican candidates around the country. I'm also on my third book tour, and that takes me around the country doing Q&As and book signings and all that. In fact, I just gave the Grace family, I presented, I don't know how many of them can read, I think there's only one or two of them, but I presented my third book to them called Turning Point.
Do you think, or have you been thinking about maybe running for an office in the future?
No. Maryland is, at least elective office in Maryland is in our rearview mirror. Yeah. It was a great run. I loved it. I loved the state legislature. I loved Congress. And obviously governor is a very special job. But right now more national in scope, running around the country doing policy stuff, helping Trump.
RNC?
Who knows? But that platform in a major law firm, King & Spalding, which is one of the largest law firms in the world, it gives me great access to people and the places I need to go.
Okay, and we're not going to see Kendall run for office? Or?
No, we have a 12-year-old still. Josh is 12. People can't remember. The baby that was born when I was governor, the fast one she pulled on me when I was governor having a baby, he's now 12. Oh, okay. He's a terrific athlete. Right. And we're having a lot of fun with him. Drew is a senior, 17 years old. So we're going through the recruiting process with him right now, but we're having a ball as parents as well.
Well, good. Now, when we get our station going, we can have you on.
I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I'm happy to do it.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
You've been watching Celebrity Interviews on TV Free Baltimore.
This is Hugh. This is my son. He started on drugs when he was 16. When his life became confused, unreal, filled with horrifying hallucinations, he ended his life. Get between your kids and drugs any way you can if you want to save the kid's life.
In March 2016, our county executive, Kevin Kamenetz, announced a settlement of litigation. Baltimore County residents apparently stood accused of serious human rights violations. So serious, the candidates committed us to spend $30 million to subsidize developers of affordable housing, and committed us to relocate over 2,000 dependent households to nice suburban neighborhoods with high-performing schools, regardless of the costs. And so, with the stroke of his pen, Towson became the epicenter of the largest public housing relocation experiment in the United States, without so much as a vote by County Council on this deal. And if you even just asked what Baltimore County did wrong, what we were accused of, you would find no answer. No record of the original complaint, no press release from the group suing us, no public record of 4 years of litigation. Over 10,000 pages of case details exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. This was done in secret for a reason, because it was intended to subvert democracy in Baltimore County, to bypass county council, and to impose a far-reaching agenda without any public input. And because the arguments against us would not have withstood public scrutiny, at least not outside of the secret proceedings of this biased HUD court. And because this plan is engineered to ignore the concerns of the communities it targets, regardless of any harm it may cause them. But really at its core, because the more information is made public, the dirtier this deal looks. County residents had no notice, no right to confront our accusers, no say in the settlement terms imposed on us, which now, by design, can never be modified by our elected representatives, even though most of this deal's costs are scheduled for after Kamenetz leaves office. Let's call this what it was, a betrayal of Baltimore County residents. But Kamenetz was not alone in that betrayal. While these special interests were suing Baltimore County taxpayers, Towson's representative, Delegate Steve Lafferty, was actually on the side of the people suing his constituents. Lafferty is the author and lead sponsor of their top legislative priority, giving them unchecked quasi-governmental power to move thousands of people around Baltimore County like dots on a map. Lafferty's bill would change state law to make this sort of abusive litigation even easier in the future. Not even Kamenetz would go that far, handing unaccountable power to a group of hostile special interests who answer to no elected officials. Maybe this is why, when the settlement was announced, these activists confidently stated the 2,000 households and $30 million was merely a first step. We know their agenda includes forcing Towson to build public housing projects, so we'd be wise to take that statement seriously. Defending democracy against a cabal of special interests, seeking unaccountable power over local communities, should not be controversial. It should not be partisan. And at a local level, it wasn't. By a 6-1 bipartisan vote, Baltimore County Council resoundingly rejected Lafferty's plan. So Lafferty responded by partnering with D.C. area Democrats in the state legislature to override the will of his county's locally elected representatives. Towson residents had no say in Kamenetz's dirty deal, but we will have a choice in 2018. Hi, I'm Steve McIntyre, and I'm running for the House of Delegates, because Towson deserves a representative who actually represents the people who call its communities home. Not some partisan agenda or some extreme ideology, and absolutely not some band of special interests who seek to impose their plans on our communities. What happened here is wrong. It really should be a national scandal. But there's a lot more of the story yet to come. This is the first episode in a series, and if you go to my website, stevemcintyre.org, sign up, I'll keep you updated on the latest. And of course, please share this with your friends and neighbors. This is important information. I don't make these statements lightly, but people of Baltimore County deserve to know the truth. Anyway, thanks a lot for paying attention and, considering the facts with an open mind. And I look forward to meeting you on the campaign trail. Thanks a lot, and have a great day. A new breed of Section 8 voucher has been weaponized, paying recipients more to live in targeted neighborhoods, while prohibiting their use altogether throughout most of the city. The comparison above raises lots of questions, like, who's setting these rents and deciding which neighborhoods to target? How do they make these decisions, and what are their goals? Most importantly, why is Towson's representative, Steve Lafferty, the leading proponent of this scheme in the Maryland legislature? Towson residents would be rightly concerned if this program were run by some HUD bureaucrats. But the truth is even more disturbing. This program is run by a private band of special interests, ideologues, and central planners who answer to no elected officials whatsoever. They call themselves the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership, or BRHP. Who's not a partner? The largest jurisdiction in the Baltimore region. Even though the BRHP is targeting its neighborhoods with over 3,100 voucher relocations. That's on top of the 2,000 Kamenetz just gave them. This unrepresentative regional quasi-government is abusive, created through a collusive settlement of litigation between the ACLU, Baltimore City, and HUD. Those parties settled their differences by agreeing that Baltimore County is actually to blame for city politicians' toxic love affair with HUD's disastrous housing projects. And so HUD agreed to outsource its powers to this unaccountable cabal for 20 years and give them over $1 billion of U.S. tax money, which they now administer in secret, exempt from oversight. It's no accident that few of the BRHP's 21 board members live in Baltimore County. The ACLU handpicked its team to be a self-perpetuating echo chamber of like-minded ideologues. This is a central planner's dream, completely insulating them from any harm their schemes cause the communities they target. They operate outside of democracy. The historic track record of their policies in Baltimore City hardly inspires confidence. Yet they arrogantly claim this failure entitles them to even more power over the entire metro area. And Delegate Steve Lafferty apparently agrees with them. He's the lead sponsor of their bill, a bill to extend their dominion over Towson's neighborhoods, knowing that we are a top target. The details of that betrayal will be the subject of the next episode, episode 3. In the meantime, thanks a lot for paying attention and considering the facts with an open mind. And of course, please like McIntyre4MD for the latest updates.
If you want change, if you want these streets cleaned up, if you want this heroin really attacked and taken care of, if you want this Section 8 housing abolished or reduced, if you want jobs coming to this county, if you want to see a better education system that's accountable to students and to the parents, if you want to see real change, and if you want to see this county to become the best county in the United States of America, then I'm your guy.
I'm Crush Kent, Assistant Chapter Commander for the Baltimore Guardian Angels. The Baltimore Guardian Angels are currently recruiting men and women of good character who are dedicated to making a positive change in their communities.
Guardian Angels, integrity,
dedication,
commitment. Men and women of good character who want to make a difference.
Guardian Angels, join us.
Join us. Join us.
The Guardian Angels, join us.
It's time to angel up.
I wish that Franklin D. Roosevelt had lived to see this day.
Actually, it's 36 years as we work on our 37th. First patrol I took out on February 13th of 1979 in the Bronx. I think of late, there are times that I'll kick back and look over the course of time to all the successes we've had against all odds and actually breathe a sigh of relief, realizing how the over-under point spread was stacked against us, and yet, because of finding local people who dared to care, knowing that there were people out there who I didn't know, but who shared in the same ideology, the same belief that you could trust in people to care for themselves. I knew it eventually would work, but now that I look back and realize all the trials and tribulations we overcame, I realize what an incredible thing it has been for so many people, including for myself, who had the roller coaster ride of a lifetime. Mayor Koch, in a way, apologized. He was our main adversary at first. He did a lot of damage, calling us vigilantes, Hell's Angels, and basically saying that we were untrained citizens going out there in sneakers, trying to protect citizens, and that we'd cause more harm than good. So before there was Google, before there was internet, there was the quote of Ed Koch that bagged and tagged us everywhere. Although back in 1992, after I had been shot up 5 times by the Gotti boys, the Gambino crime family, the first person I came to in intensive care when I had bells and whistles going off and tubes in every orifice in my body was actually Ed Koch, the former mayor. And when I looked at him, first and foremost, I thought he had died and gone straight to hell without an asbestos suit. But when I saw him smiling down at me, I knew I had survived against all odds. The game plan for the Angels as we move forward is to add on to the successes, because the problem is we're beginning to age. In some instances, key vital leaders are aging out. They're not necessarily being replaced by newer, younger leaders. So the focus has to be, how do we perpetuate this through generations? We've gone through 3 generations of guardian angels. In some instances, I can look at chapters in which there was a grandfather, a father, and a son, a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. But now all of a sudden it seems like we've stagnated with the millennials. The millennials are into technology. They're into Facebooking. They're into all kinds of means of communication that do not necessarily mean they get out into the streets and put their boots on the ground. We have to figure out, how do we transcend the new shot callers as the millennials now become the power brokers and the people who should be leading the guardian angel effort in the future. Because the guardian angel's average age has increased, whereas when I first started, it was 17 to 25. Now it's like 25 to 45. And there are some like me with gray hair. So when all of a sudden you're meeting with a police commissioner, or you're meeting with a mayor, or an elected official, or somebody who's heading a nonprofit that you want to partner up with, now you're meeting with a peer. So they're not looking at you as if you're immature, you're young, you have testosterone crashing through your cranium, maybe you're uneducated, you're a bit boorish. They're looking at you like, whoa, what high school did you go to? Really? I went there. What? Hey, I grew up near there. So now all of a sudden you have a lot of synergy. So it's easier to meet up in the suites and to gain credibility. The question is, in the streets, it still requires having young huckleberries, still having that time and energy to basically go out there and bust their shoes and do a lot of patrols. So you need the young adults because they have more freedom, more time available to them. The older you get, the more personal and professional responsibilities you have, and also you may have to take a Bengay bath after your patrol.
Right.
Personal price that I've had to pay or sacrifice as a result of being the Grand Poobah, the face of the Guardian Angels, somewhat of an iconic figure in some places. Some might say yes. Haven't been able to spend as much time with my family. At times my family was under great duress. I've certainly had my fair share of marriages that failed, 3. Some of it may be as a result of the time and the stress and the tremendous pressure of being in charge of the Guardian Angels, particularly when we birthed them, when we had to take them through their baptism through fire. I have 3 sons. I wish I could spend more time with them. Anthony, who's 11, Carter, who's 7, Hunter, who's 4. But luckily, because of social networking, I'm able to FaceTime them more than if I had to be with them all the time. I'm able to send them messages, pictures, videos of what Daddy's doing. So now they have a better understanding why Daddy is away so much. So actually, technology has improved relationships in which people can better understand what I'm doing. Whereas before, I'd be lost for a month of Sundays. I'd be out at some, exotic location or location you couldn't even find on the map. And everybody would say, what happened to Curtis? It's almost like he fell into a sump hole, a cesspool of criminal activity, only to emerge 2, 3 weeks, a month later. Hi, I'm back, ready to start another chapter. What? You just came in New York and have a cup of coffee and now you're back on the road again. That's right, pounding the hound, staying in a Motel 6, sleeping on the floor, eating air sandwiches and drinking unsweetened Kool-Aid. I mean, that was the recipe for our success as we barnstormed across the nation and across the world to where we now have 18 countries that have Guardian Angel chapters, 130 cities. So yeah, I guess there was a lot of personal things I sacrificed along the way, but if I had to be given an opportunity to do it all over again, I'd do it in a heartbeat without even thinking twice about it. Oh, there are many things I would change. Mistakes that I made along the way would clearly be a stunad, a real knucklehead, a dullard if you didn't change what you did. Choosing the wrong leader, going into the wrong neighborhood, not maybe making the wisest, most considerate assessment of a situation, a little too much personalization, wanting to get out there and thump thugs, when in reality, I should have spent a little more time training and getting people developed first. So some things that you could attribute to youthful vigor, wanting to make a difference, el rapido overnight, like most in the baby boomer generation, always wanted to see instantaneous results. So if given an opportunity, I definitely would have done a lot of things differently and probably would have had a lot of longer lasting success in some areas where we putted out. I would say that Baltimore, which has been rebirthed on 3 separate occasions, is a long-lasting success because starting out at first, completely rejected by every facet of society, from Mayor Schaefer at the time, who was an iconic institution here, to the police department that said ixnay to us, to average everyday citizens who said, you belong in New York, not in Baltimore, because back then the consciousness was so, because of the branding, that any guardian angel had to have been manufactured, trained, and shipped by Greyhound into Baltimore. It couldn't be a homegrown effort, and it was extraordinarily difficult. 2, when we were rebirthed at the time when crack cocaine exploded. So when I first came in the early 80s, I'm in the Murphy homes, the high-rises that are no more. The worst imaginable public housing situation in the nation, on par with other bad situations. Then, going from West Baltimore in the midst of the crack cocaine epidemic, we restart in the lumberyard in Pigtown. People are torching up crack. They're beaming themselves up to Scotty. Black, white, it didn't matter, but a lot of poor folks were staying in shotgun houses. 122 degrees inside, it was like a furnace. And then once we went outside, drive-by shootings as a result of us being exposed. So you were damned if you do, damned if you didn't, getting locked up by the cops, being brought into court, being called vigilantes in open court. It was a very, very difficult time. And then when Marcus Dent came back, since he was part of that first wave and revived and resurrected the effort, now he brought more of a corporate mentality. Now some of the guardian angels who had originally gotten involved understood you have to be multifaceted. You have to multitask. It's not just putting boots in the ground, being macho maniacal and thumping thugs. There's a lot of other things. And they definitely got into the swing of things, and they understood you had to develop partnerships. You couldn't do all the heavy lifting yourself. Partnerships with the police, partnerships with the community, and not just in terms of patrolling, getting involved in neighborhood cleanups, developing a junior guardian angels program, doing the kind of things that I always envisioned we would do. But you can't do it until you have the credibility of a patrol. And that's the one good thing we had always established, whether it was in the early 80s in the Murphy homes in West Baltimore, during the crack cocaine epidemic in the lumberyard section and in Pigtown, and now here in the South End, with the reinvigoration and resurrection that Marcus Dent and the other leadership has given to the Baltimore Guardian Angels in this new century.
You're watching the Baltimore Guardian Angel Show here on TV Free Baltimore.
It's easy hiding my heroin habit from my parents. If I'm tired or don't eat, I'm just acting like a typical kid. I hide my stash in my room because I know my parents would never snoop. They don't notice the missing painkillers either, or the money I take from their wallets, but I think they're gonna notice this.
Guns! The Loud Killer. Or, why you should support gun control and why the only people who don't want restrictions on the Second Amendment are child-killing right-wing bigots.
Look, I believe just as much as the next guy in protecting our children, but gun restrictions have proven to be ineffective. In the words of Ben Franklin, those who would trade safety for liberty deserve neither and will lose both.
Ben Franklin was a brainwashed NRA bigot. Plus, if the Founding Fathers were so smart, how come they're dead? Gun violence, that's why. Did you hear about the most recent mass shooting? Let me stand on graves and manipulate your emotions for a moment. The shooting was done with an AR-15, also known as the ghost gun. Called that because it turns people into ghosts. The AR-15 ghost gun has a 2 trillion round clip, fires 500,000 bullets per microsecond, and if you think that's bad, you haven't even heard about the bullet button. One press of that sucker and you unlock the cheat code for unlimited ammo and invincibility. Even worse, Free AR-15s are being distributed with every pre-order of Call of Duty, and AR-15 ghost guns are being delivered to mental health facilities by the NRA as part of their Kill Children program.
The preceding information may be entirely untrue.
We need to do something about automatic weaponry.
Actually, fully automatic weapons are illegal and have been illegal for many years, and most crime isn't committed with AR-15s, it's handguns.
Plus, violent crime has been decreasing for years. And almost all of gun violence is the product of gang violence in leftist-run cities. The likelihood of actually being killed in a mass shooting is extremely low. Extremely low? Have you not heard there were 355 mass shootings in the US this year? 355? That's ludicrous. Who would believe that? Well, NPR, PBS, HuffPo, Vox, Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, and CBS believe it. Where did they get this information? From Reddit, so you know it's trustworthy. The info came from a subreddit which was turned into a website called MassShootingTracker.org. Take a look at these terrible shootings. Oh, and almost half of them, not a single person died. It's almost like they weren't actually mass shootings. Wow, it looks like America has the safest mass shootings in the world. In fact, our mass shootings are so safe that we're willing to call 3 or more people being shot with a BB gun a mass shooting. In the US, there have been 14 trillion mass shootings in the last half hour. But it doesn't have to be that way. Look at Australia. Australia is a land where everything is trying to kill you. Except guns, of course, because they got rid of them. Huzzah for Australia, a country which saw a plummet in violence after its gun ban. Ignore the fact that this is a continuing trend in which gun violence in Australia was decreasing at an identical rate before guns were banned. And seriously, who needs an AR-15 for hunting? Or self-defense? A simple handgun works. You don't need a ghost gun.
Well, actually, the AR-15 is one of the most popular hunting rifles, and they're great for home defense, too. Not only that, but inner-city shop owners especially need AR-15s to protect their stores and families in case of riots when journalists irresponsibly rile up racial tensions.
Ugh, it's justified outrage. Get over it.
Look, not only are you losing the arguments on home defense and hunting, but even if you weren't, the Second Amendment isn't about those things. It's about the ability to rebel against tyranny.
That's paranoid and insane. The government will never become tyrannical.
What do you think of Donald Trump?
He's literally Hitler. He wants to put Muslims and women in FEMA camps. The Constitution was talking about the militia, by the way, not the people. And militia translates to government military.
What? No, it doesn't. The people are the militia. And why would any government need to give itself the right to own guns in a founding document?
I'm done with this conversation, you right-wing, pro-NRA, anti-child, anti-woman, death-loving bigot. You may have been taken in by these pro-violence hate facts, but I have enough faith in the public to trust that they will believe the objective and logical truths I propose. Guns are icky. The government was giving itself the right to own guns with the Second Amendment. AR-15s are useless for home defense and hunting, but are also the most dangerous and effective killing machines ever created. Governments never become tyrannical. Trump is Hitler, and if he wins, our government will become tyrannical. And if by some stretch you're able to poke holes in any of these airtight arguments, get ready for me to fall back on this. The Constitution is a living document, which means it says whatever I want it to say. The NRA disagrees. They think the Constitution is dead. Why? Because they shot it, that's why. But it survived. The question is, will our children survive?
Hey guys, it's Freedom Tunes. Thanks so much for watching. If you like watching leftist nonsense get destroyed and made fun of in animated form, subscribe on YouTube and like us on Facebook. If you really like watching leftist nonsense get destroyed, donate on Patreon to help me make more cartoons. Thank you so much.
Hey, Penn Jillette here. Being a libertarian means being skeptical of power. Skeptical there's one way to do things. Is there going to be one way of living that's going to make you, Justin Bieber, Pat Robertson, Marilyn Manson, Hillary Clinton, me, and your Aunt Olga all equally happy? It all comes down to this. Maybe I know the best way to live my life, but wow, I sure don't know the best way to live yours. So why not err on the side of more freedom, respect for what makes us different? If you think a little bit like I do and want to learn more, go to libertarianism.org. We've got podcasts and videos, original source material, and essays all about the idea of using a little more liberty. Libertarianism.org. Be just like me.
Broadcasting live from the studios of TV Free Baltimore. This is Speak Your Mind TV.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another excellent episode of Speak Your Mind TV. Today, we're going to talk a lot about what's happening in this major political season in Maryland. I have with me, as always, my co-host, Cole Collins.
Good afternoon.
Today, since there's so much going on in the state of Maryland, Cole and I, we're gonna cover a lot of it. It's happening so fast, it's just getting kicked off, but it seems to be heated up already between all parties, Democratic and the Republican Party and everything in between. So I'm gonna talk to Cole today. Cole's got some thoughts, some pretty intricate facts that he'd like to provide to the conversation. So, Cole?
Well, I'm not sure they're really facts as much as they are observations from 25 years of working in and around the Maryland political environment. Not 100% of my time, but over a lengthy enough period of time that I could notice some trends happening. And so, like I said, not facts, but more observations. And, we are in a very kind of antagonistic political climate right now. If you go online, you just see things seem to have broken down, totally degraded between left and right, Republicans and Democrats. It seems like the whole system is falling apart. And, we had a very surprising result in the 2016 election where we have President Trump with no prior political experience who beat an established candidate, and people are like, well, what's going on? Why is everybody so pissed off at each other is basically what it comes down to. And I noticed something when I first started as an intern in the Maryland General Assembly. I think it was 1994, so I was 22 years old. So we're talking going on almost 25 years ago. Young, fresh-faced. I was still in college at the time, and the individuals, the leadership of the state of Maryland at that time were all, there were a lot of veterans in them, and World War II vets, Korean War vets, they were, and of course Vietnam veterans who were now leadership in the state Senate and the House of Delegates. Louis Goldstein, for example, that was, I think, the last time he ever ran was in 1994. He was, as an example of the generation that these people came from, he had been elected as a state delegate from the Eastern Shore in like 1938 or something, served a couple terms, and then, Pearl Harbor's attacked. Louis Goldstein was a man who quit his job, a comfortable job as a state delegate, so that he could volunteer as a private in the U.S. Marine Corps and fight in the Pacific War. Now, how many people would do that today? And so you're talking about a generation of individuals who, regardless if they considered themselves Republicans or Democrats, they cared about democracy. They understood where they came from, and this was evident. I noticed way back then that no matter what side of the political coin was on, the leadership was on, all of the leaders had an understanding or respect for the basic democratic process. They knew these were guys who had fought fascism and communism, and they knew that above all, despite their political differences, that they were in a democratic system that they had fought, and many of them almost died for, and they all knew that they had to respect the democratic process above.
We don't have that anymore, is what you're saying, or you're alluding to.
Yeah, things changed, and that's kind of the point I'm moving to. In fact, I remember the guy who I worked for was a Marine in the Korean War, The guy who was the Baltimore City State Senator, and I wish I could remember his name. I think he probably passed away. Liberal Democrat who was also a Korean War veteran and who actually earned a combat commission in the Korean War, which, if you know anything about how commissions are awarded, it's an exceptionally rare honor for that. So despite the fact that they were on opposite ends of the political spectrum, they both still had that respect for democracy. So I was in there in 94, 95. Then the leadership started dying off. And towards about, I began to notice in the late 90s, the leadership started to, not all at once, of course, but they started to transfer over to the younger people, the younger generation, the baby boomer generation. They went from the greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw would say, and the leadership started to shift to the baby boomer generation. And that is when I started to notice the shift to ideologies.
Well, it was inevitable as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can't, you can't keep people alive forever. But each of us, we're individuals, but we're a product. We're influenced by the generation that we grew up in. Like we're Generation Xers, so we do certain things like as the media would tell you, we put our personal lives over our careers, for example, which is true. I do that. My kids, my wife, they come first versus my career, and so the baby boomer generation started they started coming into into leadership positions, and that is when I kind of started noticing a change. I didn't notice it at first. It had to go a couple of years so that I could look back on it and be like, hey, wait a minute, something's up here. But I noticed on the national side, George W. Bush was elected in 2000, 2000. Yeah, it was 2000. They had the Gore Bush thing, the Florida thing, the hanging chads and everything.
That was major during that time period.
Yeah, he started out as, he started out kind of like a more moderate Republican. A lot of them, they do. They start out kind of moderate. Obama started out moderate. But then I noticed that 9/11 comes along. And, then you have the Patriot Act. You've got the spying, that Edward Snowden, that you have that whole thing. You have a shift that is strongly away from, I guess, his original conservative values. Certainly not the values of his father, who, was also shot down in World War II. And did you know that, like George Bush Sr., he was, what is it, Cheney? Oh gosh, I made fun for screwing up the name, but he was on a mission with like 8 or 9 other pilots. He was a carrier pilot. All the other guys got shot down. He was the only one to survive. All of his comrades were taken prisoner. Those who survived and were literally eaten by the Japanese on the island that they were taken to.
I never heard that about George Bush.
Yeah, there's a picture of him being picked up by the submarine. He was the only survivor of that. So now, granted, George Bush Sr., he had the political, you're never going to agree with everybody. In fact, the first guy I ever worked for in the state Senate, Senator John Cade, who Route 97, I-97 is named after. So every time I pass the sign, I go, "Good morning, sir." As I drive down. I've been doing it for like 20 years. "Good morning, sir." Right. So George W. Bush went way from, I guess, way away from the personal liberty side, up almost to what they used to generally call it. They used to be called fascism up until World War II, and then the fascists became the Nazis, and the communists became, the leftists and rightists. But generally, everything used to be called fascism. Nowadays, they just call it statism, because since World War II, fascism has been seen as a right-wing thing. But
why is it such a bad name? You always hear "you fascist this," "you fascist that." I mean, it's
fascism, communism, statism is the word. It's like it basically comes down to, who do you want to be in control? Do you feel that people can be in control of themselves, make their own decisions, or do you feel that somebody else needs to make somebody else needs to
decisions for
to
you,
do it.
which
now,
is what communism is, right? Like
communism and fascism, and even the founding fathers had that issue. Thomas Jefferson, he was very much everyone, common man can do anything. Alexander Hamilton was, no, we need an elite who can make more decisions for people. So you've always had this. For all of us. Yeah, you have always had this dichotomy in thought. Some people believe that people can make their own decisions better, and some people believe that they or somebody else can make decisions better.
What about big business? Like communism kind of stems from making decisions for everybody. But the big corporations.
Oh, now you're talking about like the capitalism versus the Marxism sort of thing.
Well, I'm just I'm asking you because it's not often you run into somebody that can actually help answer these questions for you.
It's kind of funny because you have a situation where the businesses want to make decisions. Basically, there are two types of people in the world: people who just want to control their own lives, and people who want to control the lives of other people. Mm-hmm. And they will. So that's what it comes down to. Okay. So generally,
I agree.
And
it's good to hear it sometimes.
Right. Now you have people. You have from these two groups of people. Some of them, for some reason, decide they want to be Republicans. Some of the other people, who are the individualists, feel that whatever it is in the Democratic Party is good for them. So it mixes. So whenever I hear, whenever I hear generalizations being made about political parties, I always kind of take it with a grain of salt, because although the leadership might be generalized and they might have their own kind of ideas, not everyone underneath agrees. And now, depending on who you have, in
those
media,
respective parties, it's not everybody in the party. Everybody's trying to generalize the party, but the individuals within the party don't all agree.
And then, of course, you've got their mouthpieces. Like the Republicans would have Fox News always pointing at the bad side of the Democrats. The Democrats have CNN, MSNBC, always pointing at the bad side. So they try to frame each other. Right. And I really think people are kind of wising up to this.
I think so too.
And I really think that's where we're seeing a lot of the. I really think it's the internet that has given us so much information and so many different points of view now.
6 corporations that run.
That people are beginning to realize, wait a minute, this isn't all cut and dry. What's happening is, what it comes down to is, you have people who want to control their own lives. You have people who want to control other people's lives. And so I think generally that's where our society is. We're starting to have that kind of realization, which isn't anything new. This has been the way it has been throughout history. Now, the people who want to control their own lives, we call them individualists. We call them small d Democrats, small r Republicans. The people who want to control other people's lives, we used to call them all fascists prior to World War II, when fascism was kind of identified with the right. And then past that, past World War II, we'd call them fascists on the right and communists on the left. But in general, they're the same group of people. They all want to control each other's lives. Now, the main difference between what we consider to be the fascists and the communists are, this is the idea of nationalism. Fascism is, our nation, a nation being a group of people with a common language, culture, traditions. Like our nation, the group we were born into, is the greatest, and everyone has to respect this nation. That's basically what fascism is.
It used to be like that, but from what I'm gathering, and just to your point, I'm just adding to your point, really, is for some reason now it seems like overall the media is, maybe not just the media, but it seems like society's trying to make us want to not feel so great about being American. It's almost one of those things where
now,
where we were real patriotic before. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're Americans. We're not the greatest, and let's find some dirt on us.
So I can get to that. Find so much dirt so that's definitely in the line with the point I'm making. It's like you're saying we're having a shift in media saying oh, nationalism is bad, and nationalism is what basically caused every war for the last 2,000 years. So nationalism by itself is not really good. It's basically it's tribal warfare on a huge scale. That's what nationalism is.
Okay.
Now,
Understood.
now on the opposite side, now we can say that's fascism. The nationalists. The other side are the internationalists. They are the Marxists, the socialists, the communists, the ones who believe that we should not, that the world is a global environment and not a national environment. Now, that's a very dangerous idea to the fascists. Now, if you are a fascist and somebody in your group says, we're not the best, these other people are just as good as we are, what's that going to do to your political ideology that says, oh no, our nation is the best? That's going to put a fracture in it.
Yes, it
That's a dangerous idea. Now, likewise, on the internationalist side, on the leftist side, it's a dangerous idea to say that any one nation is better than another when you're trying to get people from all different nations. What they call it globalism. It's globalism is what it is. So on the left, you've got the globalists. On the right, you have the nationalists. And because that is why they are always at odds. Where was it? Was it in Charlotte last August? Charlottesville? Was it Charlottesville or
I think
Virginia?
It was Charlottesville. Are you talking about the school shooting?
Not the school. It's when you had a bunch of neo-Nazis, fascists on one side.
When they all congregated.
You had a riot, basically. Then you had Antifa, who are the communists, on the other side. You get these two guys together, and they're always beating the hell out of each other. In fact, you know what the biggest war in history was, in human history, in terms of just human lives lost, was the Eastern Front by itself in World War II, where you had Nazi Germany against communist Soviet Union. It was a massive war of extermination on both sides because that's the ideologies that they were fighting for. Now, the thing about fascism is you have a group of people who are only interested in their national identity. They're not going to step outside of that box too much because, let's say, we're Americans. How interested are we in running over and taking over Mexico, for example? No, that's Mexicans. You can say, the neo-Nazi would say, we don't want Mexico because it's filled with Mexicans. They're different than we are. They're a different nation.
So they're not concerned about
that
piece of land.
They don't care unless they're
sovereignty over there.
Yeah, well, in a nominal way, they're not concerned about it. But at the same time,
but they still don't like.
They don't like it. They don't want. Yeah, they're like, okay, you guys stay where you are. We'll stay where we are. We'll put up a huge fence, and you don't go to us, and we don't go over to you, and everything's fine. Now, that's not going to fly with the internationalists on the left who believe that all races, everybody should be mixing together, which is fine. The idea is that their idea is that everybody needs to be under one big group where we can control them, and the idea of internationalism allows them to do that, to achieve that globalism, and we'll do the titular one world government, and everyone's going to be happy.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Which on the right side are like, oh gosh, and that's one of the reasons why you see that hardcore fundamentalist Christians usually align to the far right, because once you start talking about globalism and one world governments, they're like, there's Revelations, it's the end of the world. That's Satan on the other side. So we all carry our baggage with us when we make our.
It makes total sense, though. It
Yeah.
makes. I mean, when you put it like that,
right?
It's how would you or how should you even expect everybody to agree with that? Like it's. There's no one. It doesn't seem like one side has it all figured out.
Nobody has it all figured out.
In their logic theory of what they're supporting.
And any rational individual is going to say there are times when you need to be an individual.
That's the balance. That's the balance.
There are issues. There are issues that should be decided by the individual. There are issues that should be decided by the group. The question is always, how much of one, how much of the other, And this the greatest generation that I initially started working under understood that, and they would try to talk these things through, you know. But then we started getting in the early 2000s, I noticed a change in attitude that became more ideological. You know, George Bush went far right, you know, and if it wasn't for George Bush, you wouldn't have had Barack Obama elected, because as you recall, towards about, I would say probably towards about 2003, he just really started going like far right. Like I was kind of shocked when he wanted to introduce a constitutional amendment like outlawing gay marriage. I'm like, why would you even?
I actually remember that.
Yeah, it's like I was like, why would you do something like this? But I think the positive thing to that discussion was it forced people into a discussion to think, well, how bad is gay marriage really? One, it's like, does it affect me? Right. Does it, is it affecting anyone I know? Is it hurting? And America came back and we decided, because the issue was forced on us, we were forced to think about it.
To rebel against it.
Yeah, we were like, well, that's kind of a dumb idea. These guys, gays, lesbians, they have been out in society forever. Since the beginning of society. Since the beginning of society, they've always been here. They don't hurt anybody, and then everyone started realizing, hey, wait a minute, that guy I knew who never got married, oh, I see, maybe he's gay. Maybe he's gay. Those two women who we used to call spinsters who lived together, oh, that's what's happening. We just never talked about it as a society. So, it kind of blew up in their faces.
We took a realistic approach to it. I think I heard a couple jokes, like one being, well, all those gays and lesbians, they should end up, let them get married. They should find out just how miserable it is, just like I am. Try to find
Be careful
humor,
what you wish for.
A humor approach.
Now, I will say that my wife is a lovely, beautiful woman. I'm so happy to be married to her, and if it wasn't for her, I'd be drunk in an alley right now. Right. And that's probably not too far from the truth.
Yeah,
actually,
and it settles you down. I realized, being a married man myself, it settled me down. All that finding the need to mingle and to get out there and search for a new relationship. It all went away.
You know who else? Now we're getting kind of off the topic here, but to that there's a famous event that happened in early Roman history. Now the event is called they call it the rape of the Sabine women. Now the word rape originally meant to seize, so and when you're talking about an event in antiquity using the word rape, it means seizure, which now you can see where it would apply.
It was common. It was a common word. Right. We're going to go in. We're going to go in and we're going to rape them for all their jewels and their gold.
We understand it to mean violent sexual assault.
Now it's sexual assault.
Right. But the event through antiquity was always referred to as the rape of the Sabine women, and what this was it was an event where the men in Rome realized that they had far too many men and not enough women to calm down the men, and in order to calm down the men, they needed women. So they invited a neighboring city-state, it was like Saba or something, or Sabine, whatever, I forget what it was, and they invited all of the men and women into a stadium, got everyone drunk, and then killed all the men and took the women. So yeah, it was a different time.
It was a different time.
It was a different time back then, right? Thankfully, we don't do that thing anymore.
Not as much policing and
things were a little different back then.
Government,
but yeah, that's anyway, right? Exactly.
But see, that's the whole point. That's the whole.
The whole point is
governing and policing is to minimize that, because if you don't have that kind of system in place, you have anarchy. You know, it's everybody's running around doing what they want to do, and there's no safety.
Yeah.
How safe? Well, I mean, every place would be like the inner city of Baltimore.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, that's why you need every guy needs to get married so to calm them down. You know, and there's a reason why in the Middle Ages the most powerful piece on a chessboard is the queen.
Yep.
And that's the reason, because the king might have all the power, but the king is listening to his wife. because the wife tells him what to do, and that's why the queen's the most powerful piece on the chessboard.
That's how it is in my relationship.
Yeah, well.
And there's no jokes there either.
Yeah, no joke there. Exactly. Probably for good reason, because he would be at the bar across the street if that wasn't the case.
Absolutely.
But, so anyway, this all comes down to, we had, as the baby boomer generation started coming in, I began to notice there was I was like, wow, George W. Bush started out kind of moderate right, and wow, he went far right. Then you have Barack Obama coming in, and he started out as moderate left, but then the first thing you saw is that you've had all these Obamacare. I'm a healthcare expert, right? And which, to me, when I saw how they were passing the law and what was in it, I was like, what in God's name are they doing? This thing's gonna be an absolute disaster. Why are they doing this? And I thought to myself, wait a minute. After seeing this and other things and some of the far left policies that Obama put in and the far right policies that Bush had put in, and things are swinging back and forth, I was thinking, I'm not sure. I mean, granted, there's always this kind of reactionary attitude towards the parties. You do one thing to the extreme, I'm going to do something to the other extreme.
They try to counteract it.
Right. I mean, that's kind of that swing back and forth. But I was like, well, these baby boomer politicians, they were raised, they were educated in the 60s and 70s under professors who told them, who told them that they had who told them that they can make a difference in the world, which is great. Everyone should make a difference in the world, but it's
also a cliche.
Yeah, it's a cliche. It's like some things you don't want to touch, But so you have a generation of politicians who came in thinking, I need to change things, even if they're fine, because maybe they're not fine. People, they started pursuing a more ideological tact than the previous greatest generation. So now you've got people aligning to the right who are very ideological. The leadership, you have people aligning to the left who are very ideological. Like on the right, Patriot Act, for example. Could you imagine 20 years ago being told that the Republican Party was going to pass a law that said that they can spy on everything, and then you've got like Obamacare, for example.
You would have felt like your privacy would have been invaded by
right. It's like you have these huge ideological swings, and then meanwhile you've got the rise of the internet, where suddenly mass media, traditional mass media, they're not in control anymore. You can if you want perspectives on the National Defense Authorization Act, again, another Republican thing that allows you to be arrested and put and detained without any trial, against due process. You can look up you can look up various hundreds of different sources to give you different perspectives, different views, different ideas about pros and cons, yeses and nos, that the mainstream, that Fox News and CNN will never give you. So suddenly the mainstream Americans, we are beginning to understand these issues as not just Democrat and Republican. We are beginning to understand these issues as individualist versus statist, and where is the balance between these issues?
That's a common theme. I wanted to jump in right there because you touch on a good point, and I've been hearing it lately in separate interviews I've heard. Tony Campbell mentioned it. Liz Mottori, she mentioned it as well in her interview. That's what it seems like people are starting to do now. Probably on a national level, but since we live here in Maryland, we're noticing it here. People are starting to notice the individuals a little bit more than the parties, and that's one of the main reasons somebody like Donald Trump got elected.
Yeah, and it should be remembered that Donald Trump wasn't elected because he was the best candidate and he had the best ideas. Donald Trump got elected because he was not one of the established Republicans or Democrats.
Broadcasting live from the studios of TV Free Baltimore, this is Speak Your Mind TV.
Welcome back to Baltimore and the CFL Live Halftime Report. The Argos and Baltimore are the showcase for the first half, but now at halftime, a very special evening here in Baltimore. This stadium has been home to some great athletes over the years, of course, for the old NFL Colts and the Baltimore Orioles. And throughout this season, Baltimore will honor players from both clubs. And right now, they're honoring three of them right now. Art Donovan a moment ago. Now Lenny Moore, the great running back for the Colts.
On behalf of my family, to keep the tradition alive, my wife, my brothers and sisters, my friends, and all of you, thank you so very much.
Lenny Moore, ladies and gentlemen. Our third inductee is simply the greatest quarterback of all time. In 17 seasons with the Colts, he established 22 team records and 8 NFL records. He was the first quarterback to throw for over 40,000 yards. He led the league in TD passes 4 straight years. His 47-game stretch with at least 1 touchdown pass will last forever. The records keep coming, huh? He was the NFL Most Valuable Player 3 times, All-Pro 6 times, and he played in 10 Pro Bowls, and he quarterbacked the Colts to 3 World Championships, and on July 28, 1979, was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He is the Golden Arm John Unitas. John, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here. After a long absence, football is back in Baltimore. We thank Jim Spiros for that. And we also thank you fans. You're the one who receives the credit for supporting the team, and hopefully will be successful throughout the years. My congratulations to Jim and to all of you. Thanks for your support over the years. Appreciate it.
John, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the first honorees for Baltimore's new Ring of Honor. John Unitas,
There's
Lenny
still
Moore,
more to come on the CFL Live Halftime Report. We'll hear from Art Donovan and John Unitas. John and Leaf will have halftime highlights. It's all coming up from Baltimore. Welcome back to Baltimore, where a very special ceremony was held at halftime of this football game. And joining me now, I got to say, as a football fan, this is a big thrill. Johnny Unitas, who starred here for so many years. It's got to be great to see football fans back in this stadium.
Well, it's great. I love to see it for the city and for the people. They've been starving for football for the past 10 years. And Mr. Spiros was strong enough to bring a football team, a Canadian football team in here. And they're doing well, I think, at the gates, and they're playing well on the field.
You threw for a lot of yards in the National Football League. You've had a chance to see the CFL now. How do you like the passing game here?
Well, it's a lot easier. So I think it's fine. The fields are wider. It's more conducive to that type of football.
Do you think as a quarterback it gives you more options than 4 down on the narrow field would?
Well, you have 3 downs here. Of course, you have to produce on the first 2 downs, but your passing game is a lot simpler because most of the time you're throwing against single coverages, and you have more field width of the field to be able to run a lot different type of patterns than you would be with our operation.
Johnny, thanks for talking to us. Welcome home.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You wonder what Johnny Unitas might have been throwing footballs in the Canadian Football League on a field this big. He said it would be a little easier.
Well, I think he's right. There's bigger lanes to throw in, obviously, but I think a man of Johnny Unitas' stature would have had success anywhere,
Absolutely.
any league, at any time.
Welcome to TV Free Baltimore's Books and Authors.
The book is called Encounter with the Aberdeen Wild Man, a True Story.
This is a true story?
Yes, I was born and raised here in Baltimore County, and this takes place about 15 miles east of here in White Marsh. These are my personal paranormal experiences growing up here in Baltimore County back in the 60s and 70s. And the Aberdeen Wild Man is actually a humanoid creature I encountered on the shores out here in the Chesapeake Bay outside the Gunpowder Falls State Park back in 1980. I encountered a creature that appeared human but was not human. When I actually met the Wild Man, I was 17. But I had had paranormal experiences leading up to that point and then after that. I was encouraged to start writing about it back in the early 2000s because that was the time when the paranormal began to explode again in the media. The Aberdeen Wild Man is the central character of the book because what I saw was what appeared to be a human. And you could have had me convinced he was a human right up until the point where I saw him make a vertical leap of more than 15 feet into the trees overhead and then proceed to run through the trees screaming and hollering like an ape. In all of nature, there's no creature capable of a 15-foot vertical leap. He had both elements of a physical body, but he also had a spiritual quality because I actually knew he was there before I turned around and saw him there. And you talk to any experienced hunter, you do not sense the bear, and you do not sense the deer or the elk or whatever. This thing I sensed, it had a human spiritual quality to it. And so he enables me to research aspects of the paranormal that are both physical and spiritual. And that covers a broad spectrum. It's actually an exhaustive investigation. I count my experiences, I list other people's experiences to kind of like have comparison's sake. I give a really brief history of how I got to this point, very brief, and then I start comparing them to the only thing in nature I'm aware of that has the like or same characteristics, and that's a Sasquatch. And so I examined more than 1,000 individual instances of encounters with Sasquatch in order to look for characteristics it had in common with this creature, and I found many. But you see, when you investigate Sasquatch or the cryptozoological field, you invariably have to start investigating the paranormal because in the paranormal you have entities sharing characteristics like and in common with the Sasquatch and other what's called crypto beasts. And then when you study the paranormal long enough and deep enough, you invariably have to start studying the extraterrestrial because you find characteristics like and in common in that field as well with the other two. One leads to another, to another, to another, and I'm chock full of facts. I do find many comparable stories to mine, yes I do. Locally, but also abroad in the country, but also around the world, because when I examined the Sasquatch, I was astonished to find how many countries have a beast similar to the Sasquatch, which I didn't know before. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, you can order through any one of them.
You're watching Books and Authors on TV Free Baltimore.
Dantini, what can I say? Well, he was for many years, 15 years or so, maybe longer, he performed at a place called the Peabody Bookstore and Beer Stube.
The great Dantini. His name was Vincent Circus, not spelled like circus show, but C-I-E-R-K-E-S. Polish background. His mother spoke no English.
And he just became this character. Well, he was a character. He grew a long white beard. He looked a little bit like Noah or whatever it is. But he was an excellent, and I mean excellent, sleight of hand artist. Now, I saw his act numerous times.
He did a very small magic act, we would call it. He could carry it all in a box with ropes and rings and things that you could, very small. But he was a skilled sleight of hand artist, I would say.
I'll never forget, he would come out and say, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a short intermission, at which time I will entertain you with a few magic tricks." But he would come out with his with playing cards. He would take a deck of cards and hold it like this here, and he could, with one hand, he could shuffle that deck of cards. And then he would take the cards and he would do what they call it a ribbon spread. Or take the cards and put them on his arm like this here. And then he would take his hand and go like this, and the cards would flip over this way, and then they would flip over that way. And then he would toss the cards up into the air like this and catch the whole deck.
Wow.
Like that, you know. He also did, they called it the miser's dream, where he would have these coins, but he would take the coins, toss them up in the air, and they would vanish. He would do that. Then he would proceed, he would catch them out of thin air. Doop, boop, boop. He had one effect in his show. He had one audience participation effect. And he brought out a, like an amber colored, it looked like a scarf of some sort. And he would get a young lady up to help him. And he would take the scarf and wrap it around her neck. Then he would say, now get ready. And he would act like he was going to pull it. He goes, uh-oh, something went wrong. And then he would pull it right through her neck. He would do that, yeah.
How long did he perform in Fells Point?
Well, see, he moved around a lot. He had a wide career.
Okay.
I mean, his whole living was from magic, I could tell you that. Went to New York. He was a professional amateur on shows. He would do that. Dantini was in several movies. One was called, was it The Great Variety? That was the one. That was one of his better films. That was the one where you actually see him do his sleight of hand act. And actually, it's a very artistic movie, but he made these other films, and some of them were not very good. He was quite talented, you know. He did midnight ghost shows with McCarl Roberts for years.
I worked with him in a thing called a spook show, because he had the contacts. We worked through a theatrical agent who booked the theaters every Friday night for weeks after week. Dantini did his same 12-minute act, and my wife and I, and sometimes another female assistant, would do the better part of the show with the illusions.
So when we had our Magic Collectors group, I remember we were up in, where were we? In Boston. That's where McCarl gave his talk about Dantini, and absolutely killed with that lecture. And people said that was the greatest lecture on magic they had ever heard. It was about Dantini. And again, he never made it big time, but he still made an impression with a lot of people, you know.
Now, obviously, Dantini's no longer with us, but towards the end of his life, when was he still performing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was performing up until the minute he died.
Really?
Yeah. He died in 1979. And so what happened was he was at the Peabody bookstore, and while he was sitting at the table waiting to go on, he just fell over, and that was it. Yeah. You know, for weeks after that, it made the headlines.
Wow.
Dantini died. So when he died, some friends of his at one of the bars, there's a little plaque. It's in the little park area right outside of Bertha's. And if you look down on the ground, you'll see it.
Godzilla. To some, it's an old movie about a guy in a rubber suit stomping around a cardboard city. To others, it's a new movie about Walter White fighting CGI monsters. But to the people who created Godzilla, it's a visual representation of the pain and fear that came out of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. You see, the stories a culture creates are a window into that culture's history. They hold more than just some monster stomping around a city. They hold history. This episode, I head back to Jeppy's to take a look at just that. Let's go.
what is important about remembering and being able to see the history of comics and pop culture? What can people glean from that?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things they can glean. There's a change in narrative style, there's a change in artistry, the way things are illustrated, the things that are focused on. It's interesting to see what sticks and what doesn't, and how things change in an illustrative style over time.
It seems like comic books and pop culture are almost a barometer for the people of the time, their concerns, their hopes, their fears.
Well, that's basically true with most of the entertainment medium, that comics and media, they show what we are at a given time, and then they become indicators of where we've been. It's like a touchstone to like a wider memory experience.
Want to know what was trendy or hip during a period of history? Just look at the television shows it produced. You're safest if you stick with shows that were contemporary to the time, kind of like I Love Lucy, Seinfeld, or Sex and the City. You can learn what clothing was in style, how people wore their hair, even social norms and cultural trends. So next time you're caught watching old episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer instead of doing your homework, just say you're doing research on how bad people dressed in the 90s.
This case is dedicated to science fiction materials from 46 to 60. Basically what we're talking about here is a time in American history where science was both the benevolent benefactor and the evil villain all wrapped in one. So you had science as the destruction of all because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but then you also have the science of space travel. Sputnik goes out, circles the globe, people are suddenly clamoring for outer space Western travels.
One of the best ways to track the fears of a culture is to look at the horror stories it produces. Take Dawn of the Dead. It's a reaction to the zombie-like state consumers get in the mall. But it didn't just start with horror films, it dates back farther, a lot farther. Grimm's Fairy Tales. Published in 1812, it's a collection of traditionally oral fairy tales told through the generations. But why were these tales told? For fun? For amusement? No! They were gruesome. They were told to scare kids, to keep them from doing the things their parents feared they would do. These stories arose from the fears of a society, from a fear for their children's safety. Horror hasn't changed since.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Now, why a book on zombies?
I kind of think of zombies as the horror westerns, where it's basically a bare-bone plot. You have a very simple thing, and I think zombie movies, particularly Romero's, are good in that fashion. And the other ones, like maybe a Fulci zombie movie, is more of like response to natural disasters. It's mostly, I really have an interest in mob mentality, and zombies are the ultimate representation of that.
You see with like Romero's Dawn of the Dead, there was an underlying commentary on American culture of the time.
There's zombie films on Redbox every week.
Yes.
Netflix is popping a new one up all the time. Walking Dead is bringing in huge numbers. It's one of the most popular shows on television right now. And people are really responding to this. We just had Brad Pitt in World War Z.
Why do you think there's a resurgence of zombies in our culture?
There's a lot of biological warfare being talked about, especially since like anthrax in early 2000s, and then Ebola and stuff like that, weaponizing diseases.
And I think with, sadly, a lot of instability in today's culture with wars, famine, stock market crashes, you name it, it's kind of how does humanity survive and go through the worst of times?
I think just with all the things that are going on around the world and all the different, possibilities people are wondering about, it's kind of like a common bond through everybody.
Movie t-shirts, comic book toys, video game art books. Our modern society is surrounded by character-based merchandise. But I bet you can't guess when it all started. Think about it for a second. No. Much older than that. Next episode on History at Risk, we find out the answer and a whole lot more. See you then.
Cats. Here is Gunhild Carling live, their live broadcast. I think we are the first in the world to having a streaming broadcast on Facebook, YouTube with only jazz music, vintage music for jazz lovers. So, hope you're having a fantastic evening together with us, the Carling family. Yeah. Woo! We have a lot of requests, and the first request is Walter De Bieri from Milano in Italy, and he wants to hear I Found a New Baby. Yeah. I found a new baby with a Dixieland touch. I found a new baby, a new baby. I found a new baby, that's all. His new way of loving made me a slave. His sweet turtle doving is all that I crave. Sweetest kiss, what a kiss, full of bliss, can't resist somehow. Tell me lies, but he's wise. Now the eyes mesmerize, and how I found a new baby with a sweet Dixieland touch. I found a new baby, a new baby. I found a new baby, that's all. Wow, this is Gunhild Carling live, and here is the Carling family. I'm so happy. Wow, Hans, Max, Nanna, Gerd, Uffe, Håkan Persson adopted for tonight. Aina, everybody. We're going to change a little bit the instruments because next song is Dinah, and the song after that is I Cover the Waterfront, and here is a greeting to the great Louis Armstrong House Museum. I was there a few weeks ago, and I met this wonderful, sweet guy, Ricky Riccardi, and you were fantastic. He's driving 5 hours a day to keep this museum alive, and he knows exactly every recording Louis did. He has scarves that Louis had. I was touching these scarves. I was looking at the scores from the Louis Russell band. I could see rabbit-dip-dap-dab-dip-dap-dip, Strutting with Some Barbecue. And when it came to the part, ba-do-ba, and Louis' part was coming in, it was just ad-lib. It was great to see all these suitcases from Louis Armstrong. So here, Ricky, here's 2 songs that played for you and to thank you for your great work. Dinah. Are you ready?
Yes.
Can you give me my deck over there? Wow. Juggling. 1, 2, 3, 4. Carolina gave me Dinah, sweetest girl beneath that Dixie sun. News are spreading about our wedding. Bells are ringing and my heart is singing. Come on, 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, Dinah is one finer in the state of Carolina. And if you know her, come on, just show to me. Dinah with the Dixie eyes blazing. How I love to sit and gaze into the eyes of Dinah Lee. Oh, every night, why do I shake with pride? Because my Dinah might change her mind about me. Dinah, if she wanted to China, would hop an ocean liner. Yeah. China, when I'm in the ocean liner to be with Dinah. you wonder why I was screaming, I can tell you, for those who play trumpet, I took this high F, and I mean, it's so rare. I had to scream. Wah! Are you ready with the next song? Because this is very special for me. Louis Armstrong in Copenhagen in 1931, I think it was, or 33. I don't remember. 33! Best concert. The second song was I Cover the Waterfront. Oh, it's okay. Louis Armstrong House Museum, thank you for being in my life. It was a great experience. Here we play for all you Louis Armstrong lovers out there. I Cover the Waterfront. Yeah. Come on. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. I cover the waterfront. I'm watching the sea. 'Cause the one I love true come back to me. Oh, mama, 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 mama. I cover the waterfront in search of my love, and I'm covered by a starlit sky above. For here am I, patiently waiting, hoping and longing for I am. Where are you? Have you forgotten? Do you remember? Will you return? I cover the waterfront. I'm watching the sea. 'Cause the one I love will true come back to me. Yeah, I cover the waterfront. I'm watching the sea, babe. The one I love true come back to me. I cover the waterfront in search of my loving babe. I'm covered by a starlit sky above. For baby, here am I, patiently waiting, hoping and longing for how I am. Where are you? Have you forgotten? Do you remember? Will you return? I cover the waterfront. I'm watching the sea. 'Cause the one I love will true come back to me. Thank you. You're listening to Gunhild Carling live, direct from Studio Savoy. We're broadcasting every Sunday evening. Here goes a clip from one of our great shows. So, hello again. I have missed you every second. I love that people want to hear songs, and I was in a party and I met a great TV celebrity. Her name is Maria Montazami, and she's Swedish, but she lives in Los Angeles right now, or San Francisco, but on the West Coast. So she wants to hear this song. Look at this clip.
Ja, hallå kära vänner. Skulle jag få önska en låt av Gunhild, vad skulle det bli för låt tror ni? Jo, absolut. It's a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, bright blessed days, dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the skies, also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, say how do you do, they really saying I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow, they learn much more than I'll ever knew, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. To myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're going to play now. Next request is When You're Smiling, because one of our listeners, Chris Morrison, he wants to hear Ulf sing and play on when you're smiling. Can you do that, Uffe? Nice. Trumpet, vocal. And then we have to invite a drummer because now Ulf, the drummer, is going to be here. So, Linnea, please join us on the drums. Woo! Can I hear a scream for this new... Okay, I have to take the trombone. That was a scream, I heard it.
Smiling, oh, when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. When you're laughing, oh, when you're laughing, the sun comes shining through. But when you're crying, you bring on the rain. So stop your sighing and be happy again. Oh, when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. Yes, 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 yes.
Hello, I'm Steve Darnall, the publisher of Nostalgia Digest, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore. Well done.
The Despothiel is on my shore, Maryland, my Maryland. His torch is at thy temple door, Maryland, my Maryland. Avenge the patriotic roar that fleck the streets of Baltimore, and be the battle queen of yore, Maryland, my Maryland. Thou wilt but cower in the dust, Maryland, my Maryland. Thy beaming sword shall never rust, Maryland, my Maryland. Remember Carroll's sacred trust, remember Howard's warlike thrust, and always onward with the just, Maryland, my Maryland.
This concludes another day of live stream broadcasting from TV Free Baltimore.